The day is over, but the mind has not received the message. There is a weight that settles upon you in the darkness, a heaviness that has little to do with the fatigue in your bones. The room is quiet, yet your head is filled with a deafening noise. It is the echo of a conversation from the morning, the shadow of a deadline looming tomorrow, the relentless replay of a mistake, a worry, a fleeting regret. The faint, blue glow of a phone screen paints a ghost on the ceiling, a silent testament to the world that refuses to let you go, and the mind that refuses to let it go. You feel exhausted, yet you cannot rest. You are desperate for silence, yet you are the source of the noise. This is the storm before the calm that never seems to arrive. This state, this peculiar brand of modern torment, is not a simple tiredness. It is a prison of our own making, a symphony of inner chaos that our contemporary world has so expertly composed. We live in an age of unprecedented connection, yet we feel profoundly alone, scrolling through the curated happiness of others while wrestling with our own unedited anxieties. We are taught to chase success, to accumulate possessions, to build a life that looks good from the outside, but we are never taught how to build a home within ourselves. And so, we find ourselves as wealthy in distraction as we are poor in spirit, accompanied always by the quiet hum of stress, the sharp sting of anxiety, and a hollow feeling that no amount of success or entertainment can seem to fill. But what if there was another way? A path that does not ask you to run faster, but instead teaches you how to stand still. A path that is not about acquiring more, but about letting go. What if the wisdom of an ancient tradition, like Buddhism, was not a distant, esoteric religion, but a practical science of the mind? A detailed and compassionate map for navigating our inner world. This is not a call to believe, but an invitation to explore. It is an offering of tools, sharpened over thousands of years, designed to calm the storm, not by fighting the wind and the rain, but by finding the unshakable ground beneath your feet. This journey does not begin in a faraway temple or on a remote mountaintop. It begins right here, in the very center of your unrest. It begins now, with the simple, quiet, and profound reality of your own breath. Before we can quiet the storm, we must first dare to name it. We must look directly into the heart of the restlessness that keeps us awake in the silent hours of the night. In the language of this ancient path, this fundamental condition of unease has a name. The name is Dukkha. Often, this word is translated into English simply as suffering, and this translation, while not entirely wrong, is a great disservice to the depth of the concept. For us, the word suffering conjures images of immense tragedy, of deep, calamitous pain, and while Dukkha certainly includes this, it is also infinitely more subtle, more pervasive, and more deeply relevant to the texture of our everyday lives. A more helpful way to understand Dukkha is as a constant, underlying friction. It is a fundamental sense of dissatisfaction, a low-grade hum of things not being quite right. It is the gap between the world as we wish it to be, and the world as it actually is. It is the feeling of being perpetually off balance, of seeking a solid footing on ground that is always subtly shifting. This is not necessarily a dramatic tragedy. It is the quiet disappointment when a planned evening doesn't feel as joyful as you had imagined. It is the flicker of irritation in slow traffic. It is the vague sense of emptiness that can descend even on a perfectly pleasant afternoon. It is the human condition of leaning into a future that never quite arrives as planned, while simultaneously recoiling from a past we cannot change. To truly grasp this, the teachings break Dukkha down into three distinct yet interwoven types. The first is the most obvious, the one we all recognize. It is called Dukkha Dukkha, the suffering of suffering, or the pain of painful experiences. This is the headache that throbs behind your eyes. It is the sharp grief that follows the loss of a loved one. It is the sting of harsh criticism, the anxiety of a medical diagnosis, the physical pain of an injury. It is the raw, unavoidable, and overt pain that is a part of any sentient life. We spend a great deal of our energy trying to avoid this form of dukkha, building walls of security, comfort, and insurance against it. Yet, inevitably, the winds of life blow, and this pain finds its way to our door. The second type is far more subtle, and perhaps more insidious for us in the modern world. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the anxiety that is woven into our happiest moments. Think of a perfect day on vacation. The sun is warm, the company is good, the scenery is beautiful. And yet, in the back of the mind, a tiny voice whispers, "This will end soon." That is viparinama dukkha. It is the pressure that comes with a promotion at work. The joy of the new title is immediately paired with the fear of not living up to it. It is the beautiful, intoxicating beginning of a new romance, which carries within it the seed of a potential ending. This form of dukkha arises because we try to grasp and hold on to pleasant experiences, to make them permanent fixtures in our lives, but their very nature is to be fleeting. The joy is real, but it is a passing cloud. The pleasure is real, but it is a wave that will inevitably recede from the shore. Our attempt to build a permanent fortress on the shifting sands of pleasure is what creates this unique form of suffering. We suffer not because the experience is painful, but precisely because it is pleasant, and we know it cannot last. This leads us to the third and most profound level, sankhara, dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the background radiation of dissatisfaction that permeates everything. It is the baseline level of unease that comes from being a self that is, in reality, a complex, unstable, and ever-changing collection of processes. Our bodies change. Our thoughts are a ceaseless torrent. Our emotions are a volatile weather system. Our perceptions are unreliable. There is no solid, permanent, independent me to be found in any of it. Sankhara dukkha is the deep, existential vulnerability that comes from this truth. It is the reason why a person who seemingly has everything, wealth, fame, success, relationships, can still lie awake at night with a profound sense of emptiness. It is the feeling that something is fundamentally missing, or that the whole structure of our lives, no matter how well built, is ultimately fragile. It is the friction of being in a temporary world. This third kind of dukkha is the engine of our modern malaise. The gnawing feeling of status anxiety, the compulsive need to check our phones for validation in the form of likes and comments, is a direct expression of sankhara dukkha. We seek external confirmation because our internal sense of self feels so fragile and conditioned. The now famous fear of missing out, or FOMO, is a potent cocktail of the second and third types of dukkha. We see the curated highlight reel of someone else's life, a seemingly permanent state of pleasure, and it amplifies the suffering of change in our own fleeting happiness, as well as the baseline feeling that our own conditioned existence is somehow deficient. Consumer culture is built almost entirely on promising a cure for sankhara dukkha. It tells us that this feeling of lack, this inner void, can be filled by the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next experience. But each new acquisition provides only a momentary hit of pleasure, which quickly fades, a perfect example of viparinama dukkha, leaving the underlying background dissatisfaction untouched and often even more starkly visible than before. To see dukkha not as a personal failure, but as a universal condition is the first step toward freedom. There is a famous story that illustrates this with heartbreaking beauty. A young woman named Kisa Gautami lost her only child, an infant son. Mad with a grief that consumed her whole world, she refused to accept his death. She carried his small, lifeless body through her village, going from house to house, begging for a medicine that could bring him back. Some mocked her, others pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, she was sent to the Buddha. She laid her son at his feet and pleaded for the magical cure. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and told her he could help, but first, she must bring him one thing: a single mustard seed from a house where no one had ever died. Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gautami began her quest. At the first house, a grand mansion, she asked for the seed. "You may have a whole jar of mustard seeds," the kind woman there said, "but my beloved father died here just last year." Disappointed, Kisa Gautami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. "We can give you seeds, but our family has known death. My husband died in this very room. We lost our youngest child to a fever." She went to every house in the village, from the richest to the poorest, and in every single one, she heard a story of loss. As dusk began to fall, the truth slowly dawned on her, not as a harsh intellectual concept, but as a deep embodied understanding. Her own, singular, unbearable grief was not, in fact, hers alone. It was the shared story of all humanity. The pain of loss was not a punishment visited upon her. It was woven into the very fabric of existence. In that moment of realization, her frantic, grasping search for a cure transformed into a profound, sorrowful, and deeply calming acceptance. She understood dukkha, and in that understanding, the healing could begin. Looking at our own lives through this lens is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of radical honesty and profound self-compassion. It is the moment a physician correctly identifies the illness. A diagnosis is not the end of the story. It is the necessary beginning of any possible cure. To admit that life has this inherent friction, this unsatisfactoriness, is to stop blaming ourselves for feeling it. It is to stop pretending that we should be happy all the time. It is to finally put down the heavy burden of pretending that things are not as they are. When we accept the diagnosis of dukkha, we can then begin to ask the intelligent questions. What causes this friction? What is the source of this churning, this constant dissatisfaction? The investigation leads us away from the world outside and turns our gaze inward to the wild, untamed, and ceaselessly active nature of our own mind. If the diagnosis for our inner turmoil is dukkha, the pervasive friction of dissatisfaction, then the most immediate and visceral symptom is the ceaseless, chaotic monologue inside our own heads. The ancient masters of this inner science had a wonderfully apt and vivid name for this phenomenon. They called it capacita, which translates as the monkey mind. It is a perfect metaphor because it captures not just the content of our thoughts, but their very character: restless, reactive, and seemingly untamable. Imagine a wild monkey trapped inside a room. It never stays still. It screeches and chatters. It leaps from the windowsill to the top of the bookshelf, knocking over precious objects. It swings from the light fixture, then scrambles under the table. It is driven by impulse, chasing any flash of light, any sudden noise, any fleeting memory of a fruit it once ate. It lives in a state of perpetual, agitated motion. This is the state of our untrained mind, especially when we lie down at the end of the day and remove the external distractions that have kept it occupied. The room goes dark and quiet, but the monkey inside awakens. It swings wildly from a branch of the past to a branch of the future, rarely, if ever, resting in the solid trunk of the present moment. It leaves us feeling scattered, drained, and utterly exhausted, even as we are doing nothing at all. To understand this creature, we must observe its habits. The monkey mind has several favorite activities, patterns of thought that it falls into over and over again. The first is its obsession with the past. This is the historian monkey, but it is a terrible historian, interested only in regret and resentment. It endlessly replays conversations from yesterday, last week, or even decades ago, editing our lines in hindsight. Oh, I should have said this. Why did I do that? It forces us to relive our most embarrassing moments, feeling the flush of shame as if it were happening for the first time. It nurses old wounds and grievances, picking at the scabs of past arguments, reanimating old hurts until they feel fresh and raw again. This monkey convinces us that by compulsively reviewing the past, we can somehow change it or learn from it. But most of the time, all it does is generate a toxic fog of shame and bitterness that clouds our present reality. If it is not dwelling in the past, the monkey is rocketing into the future. This is the fortune teller monkey, and it is an exceptionally anxious and pessimistic seer. It is a master of the what-if game. What if I fail the presentation? What if this headache is something serious? What if they don't like me? It constructs elaborate, detailed, and usually catastrophic scenarios about what might happen tomorrow. It rehearses arguments that will likely never occur. It feels the anxiety of 1,000 potential disasters, none of which have happened. This constant projection into a non-existent future is the very definition of anxiety. It keeps our nervous system in a state of high alert, preparing for threats that are pure fiction, created by the frantic spinning of our own mind. Between the historian monkey dragging us into the unchangeable past and the fortune teller monkey launching us into an unknowable future, there is very little space left to simply be where we are. And overseeing this entire chaotic operation is the third and perhaps most persistent monkey, the judge. This is the inner critic, the one who provides a constant, running commentary on everything. Its primary job is comparison and evaluation. It judges us. You're not smart enough. You're not disciplined enough. You're not attractive enough. It judges others. Why are they so slow? Why is he so arrogant? I can't believe she wore that. And it judges the present moment itself. This is boring. This isn't what I wanted. I should be feeling happier right now. This judging mind is the ultimate source of dissatisfaction, because its very function is to find fault, to highlight the gap between what is and what it thinks should be. It is never content, and so, as we lie in bed, this frantic committee meeting is in full session. The historian brings up an old failure. The fortune teller projects that failure onto a future event, and the judge confirms that yes, this is all because we are fundamentally flawed. It is a perfect, self-sustaining system of mental torture. Faced with this inner chaos, our first, most natural instinct is to fight back. We try to silence the monkey. We tell it, "Be quiet, I need to sleep." We try to force our mind to be a blank slate, but this is where we discover a fundamental paradox of the mind. What you resist persists. Trying to suppress a thought is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes immense effort, and the moment you relax your grip, the ball erupts from the surface with even greater force. If I tell you, do not, under any circumstances, think of a large, blue horse, what is the first image that appears in your mind? The very act of resistance gives the object of resistance more power. When we struggle against our thoughts, we are doing two things. We are giving them our full attention, and we are adding a second layer of suffering. Now, not only do we have the initial restless thoughts, but we also have frustration, anger, and anxiety about the fact that we are thinking. We become anxious about our anxiety. We get stressed about our stress. We have gone from wrestling one monkey to wrestling a whole troop of them. This is the critical turning point in our understanding. This is where this ancient wisdom offers a profound and compassionate pivot. What if the monkey is not the enemy? What if the mind's constant activity is not a flaw, but simply its nature, just as it is the nature of the heart to beat and the lungs to breathe? Perhaps the problem is not that the monkey exists, but that it is untrained, undirected, and bored. Imagine it not as a malicious demon, but as a hyperactive child full of energy, or a brilliant young puppy who hasn't been taught where to sit. You would not beat the child or punish the puppy for having energy. You would find a constructive way to channel it. You would give it a task, a focus, a gentle and patient form of guidance. The path to a peaceful mind, therefore, is not through suppression, but through befriending. It is a shift from a mindset of conflict to one of compassionate acceptance and skillful redirection. There is a simple story used to illustrate this. A young man, determined to meditate, is constantly pestered by a mischievous monkey. He tries everything to get rid of it. He shouts at it, he throws things at it, he tries to ignore it. But the more he struggles, the more agitated and disruptive the monkey becomes. Exasperated, he goes to an old, wise teacher and explains his problem. The teacher listens patiently and then says, "Next time you sit down, simply hold out your hand and give the monkey a single banana to hold." The young man is skeptical, but he does as he is told. He sits, and when the monkey appears, he offers it a banana. The monkey, intrigued, takes the banana, and then a small miracle occurs. With its hands and attention now fully occupied by the task of holding this single, interesting object, the monkey becomes quiet. It sits down. Its frantic energy has not disappeared, but it has been channeled and focused. It is content. That banana is a metaphor. It is the single, simple, wholesome object of attention that we can gently offer our minds. The goal is not to kill the monkey or to chain it in a cage. The goal is to give it a banana. It is to provide a calm, steady anchor point for that restless energy. It is to learn, with immense patience, how to transform the frantic, scattered chatter into a focused, peaceful hum. So our task is not to declare war on our own minds. It is to ask, what is our banana? What is the simple, ever-present reality that we can offer our mind to hold? A reality that can gently and lovingly pull us from the tangled branches of past and future and place us firmly on the solid ground of right now? The answer to that question is closer to us than anything else. It is the very rhythm of life itself. If the chattering monkey of the mind is the problem, then we must find its banana. We need a task so simple, so immediate, and so engaging that it can gently absorb that restless energy. We need an anchor that can hold us steady in the turbulent waters of our own thoughts. That anchor is not something you need to buy, or learn, or acquire. You have possessed it every second of your life. It is your own breath. This may sound anticlimactic, even simplistic. The cure for our profound existential angst is to just breathe. But this misunderstands the practice. We are not talking about the simple biological function, but about the conscious, deliberate act of paying attention to it. The formal name for this foundational practice is anapanasati, which simply means mindfulness of breathing. It is the master key that unlocks the door to inner stillness. Why the breath? Because it has several unique and powerful qualities. First, it is always with us, from the moment of birth to the moment of death. It is the most reliable companion we will ever have. Second, it is always in the present moment. You cannot breathe in the past, nor can you breathe in the future. To be aware of your breath is, by definition, to be here, now. It is an instant and effortless return to the present. Third, it is neutral. Unlike our thoughts, which are often charged with emotion, the breath is just the breath. It offers a calm, non-judgmental home base to which we can return. Think of the breath as a bridge. It is the living connection between our body, the physical world of sensations, and our mind, the non-physical world of thoughts and emotions. These two worlds are in constant communication, and the breath is their primary language. Notice how your breathing changes with your emotional state. When you are anxious or frightened, your breath becomes short, shallow, and rapid, happening high up in your chest. Your body is preparing for fight or flight. When you are calm and relaxed, your breath becomes deep, slow, and rhythmic, originating from your abdomen. This connection is a two-way street. Just as the mind affects the breath, we can skillfully use the breath to affect the mind. When we consciously bring a gentle, steady, and accepting awareness to the breath, we are sending a powerful signal back to our nervous system. The signal says, "You are safe. There is no threat here. You can stand down." This message of calm travels across that bridge from the body to the mind, and it gently, patiently, coaxes the monkey mind down from its state of high alert. It doesn't force the monkey into submission. It creates an environment of safety in which it feels it can finally rest. So, how do we practice this? The beauty lies in its simplicity. There is no need for a special cushion, incense, or a silent retreat. You can do this right now, as you are lying in bed, preparing for sleep. First, find a comfortable position. Allow your body to feel heavy and supported by the bed beneath you. You don't need to sit in a rigid posture. The only aim is to be comfortable enough to relax, but not so comfortable that you instantly drift away. And now, the most important instruction. Do not try to change your breath in any way. This is not a breathing exercise. You are not trying to take deep, yogic breaths. Your only task is to become an impartial observer, a curious scientist discovering the breath for the very first time. Let the body breathe itself. Your job is simply to feel it. You can choose where to rest your attention. For some, the most obvious place is the tip of the nostrils. You can feel the subtle sensation of the cool air entering as you breathe in, and the slightly warmer air flowing out as you breathe out. There is a world of sensation in that tiny spot, if you listen closely. For others, a better anchor point is the chest, feeling the gentle expansion and contraction with each respiratory cycle. But for many people, especially when lying down, the most stable and calming place to rest the attention is on the abdomen. Place a hand there if it helps. As you breathe in, feel the gentle rise of the abdominal wall. As you breathe out, feel the soft release, the gentle falling. Let your awareness merge with these simple, raw sensations. Feel the pressure, the movement. There is no need for words, but if you find the mind is especially busy, you can use a very soft, silent mental note. As the breath comes in, you might whisper in your mind, in or rising. As the breath goes out, you might note, out or falling. This is not a command. It is a gentle label, like a feather-light touch, just to help keep the mind tethered to the sensation. The real practice is to go beneath the words and feel the physical reality of the rising and the falling, in and out, rising and falling. This is your only task. This is the banana you are offering the monkey. Now, something will happen. It is an absolute certainty. After a few breaths, maybe even just one, the monkey will get bored. It will see something shiny in the corner of its eye, thought, a worry, a memory, a plan, and it will leap off after it. You will be sitting there, intending to watch your breath, and suddenly you will realize that for the last 5 minutes, you have been composing an email to your boss, or replaying an argument, or planning your weekend. This is the most important moment in the entire practice. This is the moment where true change happens, because in that instant, you have woken up. Your natural reaction might be frustration. Ugh, I can't do this. My mind is hopeless. This is the voice of the judging monkey. Here, we must apply a radical act of kindness. The fact that you noticed your mind had wandered is not a failure. It is a resounding success. That moment of noticing is a moment of pure mindfulness. The practice is not to never wander. The practice is to notice when you have wandered, and then to gently, patiently, and without any judgment, return. Think of it like training a puppy. You bring a new puppy home, and you want to teach it to sit on its little bed in the corner. You place it on the bed and say, "Stay." The puppy wags its tail, licks your hand, and for a second, it stays. Then, a dust bunny blows by, and it's off, chasing it with joyous abandon. What do? Do you scream at the puppy? Do you punish it for being a puppy? Of course not. You smile at its nature. You walk over, you gently pick it up, and you place it back on its bed. A minute later, it's off again, sniffing at the furniture. And you, with endless patience, gently bring it back again. You might do this 100 times in an afternoon. This is the practice. Your mind is the puppy, full of energy and curiosity. The breath is its bed. The act of noticing it has wandered and gently escorting it back is the training. Each return is an act of loving kindness toward yourself. Each return is a strengthening of the muscle of mindfulness. So, when you find yourself lost in a long train of thought, simply acknowledge it. Ah, there's the fortune teller monkey again, or simply thinking. And then, with the gentleness of a mother placing her child back in its crib, guide your attention back to the feeling of the rising and falling of your own abdomen. You are not fighting your thoughts. You are simply choosing not to board the train. You stand on the platform and you let the train of thought rush by, while your attention remains firmly rooted in the feeling of the breath. This is how we develop a stable center. This is how we drop anchor in the middle of the storm. It is not about stopping the waves of thought, which is impossible, but about finding the stillness of the deep ocean that is unaffected by the turmoil on the surface. By focusing on this simple, rhythmic, and vital process, you are teaching your mind, one breath at a time, that it is possible to be still. And from this newfound place of stability, from this anchored ship, we are now in a position to do something remarkable. We can begin to look at the waves themselves and truly see their nature. From the stable shore of the anchored breath, we can now begin to watch the ocean of our experience. We are no longer being thrown about by the waves, and so, for the first time, we can truly see their nature. And the first, most fundamental, and inescapable truth we observe is this: everything moves. The waves of thought, feeling, and sensation constantly arise, crest, and then dissolve back into the ocean from which they came. Nothing is static. Nothing is permanent. This universal, undeniable law of flux is known as anicca, or impermanence. To the Western ear, conditioned to seek security, stability, and permanence, the idea of universal impermanence can sound like a dark and depressing philosophy. It can feel like a threat, a pronouncement that nothing matters because nothing lasts. But this is a profound misunderstanding. Anicca is not a philosophical opinion or a belief system to be adopted. It is a simple, observable fact of reality, as neutral and as fundamental as the law of gravity. To understand anicca is not to become a pessimist, it is to become a realist. And in that realism, a deep and unexpected freedom can be found. Look first at the world around you. The majestic mountains that seem like symbols of permanence are, in reality, being ground down grain by grain by the wind and the rain. In the vastness of space, stars are being born in fiery nebulas, while others collapse into darkness, their light still traveling toward us long after they are gone. The very coastlines of our continents are in a slow, constant dance with the oceans. On a more human scale, the seasons turn in their reliable cycle, the vibrant green of summer inevitably giving way to the decay of autumn. Cities rise, cultures flourish, and then fade into history. Fashions that seem vitally important today will be laughable relics a generation from now. This is the rhythm of the universe: birth, growth, decay, and death. It is a ceaseless, creative, and destructive flow. Nothing is exempt. Now, bring that observation closer to your own body. This physical form that we so strongly identify with as me is a perfect illustration of anicca. It is not a solid, static object, but a dynamic process. Millions of your cells are dying and being replaced at this very moment. The air you breathed in a moment ago is already gone, replaced by a new breath. The food you ate yesterday is being transformed into energy, tissue, and waste. The body you inhabit today is composed of entirely different matter than the body of your childhood. Think of the images of yourself through the years: an infant, a toddler, an adolescent, a young adult. They seem like different people, and in a very real physical sense, they are. Your body is not a fixed entity. It is a river of constant, flowing change. To see this is to begin to loosen the tight, fearful grip of identification with this ever-altering form. And if the body is a river, the mind is a waterfall. The contents of our consciousness are the most fleeting and ephemeral phenomena of all. Rest your attention inward for just a moment, from the anchor of your breath. What do you see? A thought about an item you need to buy flits across the screen of your mind and is immediately replaced by a snippet of a song you heard this morning. Then, a wave of boredom washes over you, which is quickly followed by a sudden memory from your school days. A flicker of anxiety about a future event appears, and just as you begin to grasp it, it dissolves, replaced by a sensory perception, the sound of a car passing outside, the feeling of the blanket on your skin. Our inner world is a relentless cascade of thoughts, emotions, memories, and sensations, each one appearing for a moment, unbidden, and then vanishing to make way for the next. There is no stillness here. There is no solid ground. It is pure, unadulterated, constant change. This is the observable reality. So where does the suffering, the dukkha, come from? The suffering arises from a simple, tragic mistake. We try to build a permanent home on the bank of a constantly flowing river. We try to grasp the water of experience and hold it in our fists. This resistance to the natural flow of reality happens in two primary ways: clinging and aversion. First, we cling to what is pleasant. We experience a moment of joy, a feeling of love, a success at work, a sense of peace. The mind immediately reacts. This is good. I like this. I need more of this. How can I make this last forever? In that moment of clinging, we introduce anxiety. The fear of losing the pleasant experience begins to poison the experience itself. We can no longer simply enjoy the warmth of the sun because we are already worrying about the coming clouds. This is the suffering of change we spoke of earlier, born directly from resisting the law of anicca. We suffer because we demand permanence from a world whose very nature is to change. The other side of this coin is aversion, or pushing away what is unpleasant. A difficult emotion arises: sadness, fear, anger, jealousy. A painful sensation appears in the body. A negative thought pattern begins to loop. The mind immediately reacts. This is bad. I don't want this. Get this away from me. I shouldn't be feeling this. We tense up, we resist, we fight. We try to build a dam to stop this part of the river. But trying to push away a thought or a feeling is like trying to fight your own shadow. The struggle itself gives it more substance, more energy, more reality. The feeling of anxiety, which might have been a fleeting cloud, becomes a solid, terrifying thunderstorm because we are so invested in fighting it. Our resistance to the unpleasant experience is often far more painful than the experience itself. Herein lies the liberating secret of anicca. If it is true that all pleasant experiences must pass, it is also blessedly true that all unpleasant experiences must pass. The most painful emotion, the most obsessive thought loop, the deepest despair, is subject to the same universal law. It is impermanent. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It is a temporary visitor, not a permanent resident of your mind. When you are in the grip of a powerful anxiety before sleep, you can gently remind yourself, this feeling is not solid. It is energy in motion. It arose and it will cease. This too shall pass. When you are caught in sadness, you can observe it with the deep knowing that it is a weather pattern, not the sky itself. This is not an intellectual trick. It is a profound shift in perspective that creates space. It allows you to endure the storm without believing that the storm is all there is. It robs the monsters of the mind of their greatest weapon, their illusion of permanence. There is a timeless story that captures this wisdom perfectly. A great and powerful king, who had everything a man could desire, found himself tormented by the wild swings of his own heart. In times of victory and celebration, he would become inflated with pride and arrogance. In times of defeat or crisis, he would fall into the darkest pits of despair. Weary of this inner volatility, he summoned his wisest counselors. I want you to create for me an object, he commanded, something I can keep with me at all times. It must have a power. When I am ecstatically happy, looking at it must bring me back to earth. And when I am in the depths of sorrow, looking at it must give me hope and courage. The wise men and women deliberated for weeks. Finally, they returned to the king and presented him not with a grand talisman, but with a simple, elegant ring. The king was puzzled until he looked closely at the inscription, etched into the metal. It contained just 4 words: this too shall pass. From that day on, the king kept the ring with him always. At the height of a triumphant parade, he would glance at it and feel a check on his pride, a reminder of humility. In a council of war where all seemed lost, he would touch the inscription and feel a surge of endurance, a reminder that no night lasts forever. The ring, with its simple, profound message, became his most precious treasure, for it taught him the art of equanimity. To truly let the reality of anicca sink in is to find your own version of that ring. It is to accept the world on its own terms. It is to stop demanding that the river of life stop flowing for your convenience. When we stop fighting the current, we can learn to swim with it, even to surf its waves. We can learn to savor the joyful moments without desperately clinging to them, appreciating them more fully precisely because we know they are fleeting. And we can learn to navigate the painful moments with more grace and courage, knowing that they too are part of the flow and will not last. This acceptance is a profound act of letting go, but as we rest in this understanding, as we watch the endless waterfall of our own experience, a deeper and even more unsettling question begins to surface. If my body is constantly changing, if my thoughts are not mine to control, if my emotions are just passing weather, then who am I? What is this I that is witnessing all this change? If everything I identify with is impermanent, is the identifier itself permanent? As we stand on the seemingly solid ground of the observer, we begin to feel that ground tremble, and we are led to the very heart of the mystery of the self. The anchor of the breath has allowed us to witness the ceaseless, flowing river of our own experience. We have looked at this river and seen its fundamental nature, anicca, impermanence. Everything we can possibly experience, every thought, every sensation, every emotion, every state of our body, and the world around useless, in a constant state of flux. This realization, once it truly begins to settle in, naturally gives rise to the deepest and most profound of all human questions. It is a question that has been whispered in monasteries, shouted from mountaintops, and contemplated in the silent depths of the heart for millennia. The question is this: if everything I experience is constantly changing, then who or what am I? What is this I that is witnessing all this change? This inquiry takes us to the very heart of this ancient path, to a teaching that is perhaps the most challenging, the most radical, and ultimately, the most liberating. It is the teaching of anatta, often translated as no self or not self. And just as with dukkha, this translation can be profoundly misleading. Anatta does not mean that you do not exist. It is not a doctrine of annihilation or nihilism. When you are hit, the pain is real. When you feel joy, the joy is real. The teaching is far more subtle and infinitely more practical. Anatta proposes that while there is experience, there is no permanent, independent, unchanging self or soul at the center of the experience. The solid, continuous me that we feel ourselves to be. The CEO in the headquarters of our mind who is thinking our thoughts and feeling our emotions simply cannot be found upon close investigation. What we call the self is not a static noun, but a dynamic verb. It is not a thing, but a process. Not a monolith, but a shimmering, ever-changing coalition of energies. To make this less abstract, the teachings offer a brilliantly systematic way to conduct this investigation for ourselves. They suggest we look for this elusive self in the 5 categories that comprise the whole of our experience. These are called the 5 aggregates, or the 5 skandhas. Let us together go on a search for this self. First, there is form. This is the physical body, with all its parts and sensations. Our culture teaches us to strongly identify with our form. We say, I am tall, I am sick, I am getting older. But are you really your body? As we have seen, this body is in a state of radical flux. It is not the same body you had as a child. It is aging and will one day perish. If you were to lose a limb in an accident, would you be any less you? Of course not. The body, then, is something you have, not something you fundamentally are. It is the first aggregate, a temporary vessel. So we look at the body and we conclude, the self is not found here. Second, we look in feeling. This refers not to complex emotions, but to the raw, immediate tone of any experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The warmth of the sun on your skin is pleasant. The sting of a paper cut is unpleasant. The feeling of your shoes on your feet is, most likely, neutral. These feelings arise and pass away with lightning speed, completely dependent on what our senses come into contact with. Are you your feelings? If so, which one are you? The pleasant feeling you had this morning, or the unpleasant one you had 5 minutes ago? They are contradictory and fleeting. To identify with any of them would be to build a house on the surface of a stormy sea. So we look at feeling, and we must conclude, the self is not found here. Third, we investigate perception. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes, identifies, and labels. It sees a certain configuration of shape and color and says, tree. It hears a certain vibration in the air and labels it, music. It feels a certain thought pattern and calls it worry. Perception is the cognitive process that organizes the raw data of our senses into a coherent world. But is this you? Our perceptions are notoriously unreliable. We mishear lyrics, we misjudge situations. We see faces in the clouds. Our perceptions are heavily conditioned by our language, our culture, and our past experiences. The world does not look the same to a jungle tribesman as it does to a Wall Street broker. Perception is a conditioned, fallible process. So we look at perception and we conclude, the self is not found here. Fourth, we come to mental formations. This is a vast and crucial category. It includes all of our thoughts, ideas, opinions, beliefs, moods, habits, intentions, and volitions. This is where most of us are convinced the self resides. We say, I am my thoughts. I am my political beliefs. I am an anxious person. But let's look closely, as we did with the monkey mind. Are your thoughts truly yours? They often arise unbidden, against your will. One moment a kind thought appears, the next, a cruel one. An opinion you held with absolute certainty 10 years ago may seem foolish to you today. A mood of deep sadness gives way to laughter. This aggregate is a chaotic whirlwind of mental events. If you are your thoughts, which one are you? The generous one or the selfish one? The confident one or the terrified one? They cannot all be the essential you. They are simply conditioned mental events, arising and passing away. So we look at our mental formations, and we must conclude, the self is not found here. Fifth, and finally, we examine consciousness itself. This is the raw faculty of awareness that knows the other four aggregates. There is seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, thinking consciousness. But this consciousness is not a constant, monolithic watcher. It is also dependent and flickering. Seeing consciousness only arises when there is an eye and a visible object. It is not present in a dark room. Hearing consciousness only arises when there is an ear and a sound. Without the objects of the senses and the mind, there is no corresponding consciousness. It is not a separate, all-powerful soul observing from on high. It is a conditional process, arising and ceasing moment by moment along with its objects. So, we look at consciousness, and we conclude, the self is not found here either. A classic dialogue from the Buddhist texts illustrates this deconstruction perfectly. A Greek king named Melinda, a great intellectual, sought to challenge a humble Buddhist sage named Nagasena. The king asked the sage his name. After Nagasena answered, he asked the king how he had arrived at their meeting. In a chariot, the king replied. Nagasena then began a gentle line of questioning. Your Majesty, is the pole of the chariot? The chariot? No, venerable sir, said the king. Are the wheels the chariot? Number? Is the axle, or the reins, or the frame the chariot? No, the king replied to each question. Then, Nagasena continued, is the chariot all of these parts combined? Yes, the king agreed. But your Majesty, the sage pressed, if you take apart the pole, the wheels, the axle and the frame, where then is the chariot? The king fell silent. Nagasena explained, chariot is just a convenient name, a concept that we apply to a particular arrangement of parts. It has no independent, essential existence of its own. In exactly the same way, Nagasena is just a convenient designation for this temporary collection of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. If you look for a permanent, unchanging person here, you will not find one. This is not an abstract philosophical game. It is the very key to our liberation from suffering, especially the kind that torments us at night. Think of a painful thought that keeps you awake. I am a failure. We take this statement so personally. The I feels solid, and the failure feels like a permanent stain upon it. But now, we can investigate. Who is this I that is a failure? Is it your body, your feelings, your thoughts? We realize that I am a failure is just a mental formation. It is an impermanent, conditioned thought passing through awareness. We have been identifying with a passing cloud and calling it the sky. When we see this, the thought loses its terrible power. We no longer have to defend this fictional, solid self from criticism. We no longer have to carry the heavy burden of its history of failures and its anxieties about the future. When an insult comes, we can see it as just sound waves hitting an eardrum, being interpreted by a conditioned perception. We don't have to build a fortress around a self that isn't even there. This understanding is like putting down the heaviest bag you have been carrying your entire life, a bag you didn't even realize you were holding. It is the source of a profound peace. We stop taking ourselves so seriously. We can learn to watch the drama of our own minds with a sense of lightness and even humor. This is the ultimate freedom. With this, our investigation into the nature of things is complete. Dukkha is the condition of friction we experience. Anicca is the impermanent, flowing nature of all things. Anatta is the empty, process-like nature of the self who experiences it all. These are the three marks of existence, the fundamental truths that are revealed when we turn on the light of mindfulness. We now see the situation clearly. But seeing the design of the prison is not the same as walking out the door. Now we must turn our attention to the engine that powers this entire system, the fuel that keeps us running on the hamster wheel of dissatisfaction. What are the twin forces that drive our clinging and our aversion? Having turned on the light of wisdom, we can now see the landscape of our inner world with startling clarity. We see the pervasive friction of dukkha, the truth that all things are marked by dissatisfaction. We see the universal law of anicca, the ceaseless flowing river of impermanence. And we have peered into the very nature of the observer and found anatta, the empty, process-like nature of the self. This is the wisdom that illuminates. But wisdom alone does not stop the machine. We can see the design of the hamster wheel, but what keeps us running on it? What is the fuel, the raw energy that propels this entire cycle of stress and dissatisfaction? The teachings identify two primary engines, two powerful forces that operate within the heart and mind, driving the monkey mind on its frantic journey. They are the twin poles of our reactive existence, the puppet masters pulling the strings of our thoughts and emotions. These two forces are craving and aversion. They are, in essence, two different flavors of the same fundamental resistance to reality. They are two ways of saying no to the present moment. Craving looks at the present moment and says, "No, this is not enough. I need something else to be happy." Aversion looks at the present moment and says, "No, I refuse to accept this. This needs to go away." Together, they form the magnetic field of dissatisfaction in which we live our lives, constantly being pulled toward what we want and pushed away from what we don't. Let us first examine craving. The ancient Pali word used for this is tanha, which translates literally as thirst. This is a perfect description. It is not a gentle preference. It is a deep, primal, gut-level thirst. It is the gnawing feeling of lack, the pervasive and deeply held belief that our current experience is incomplete, and that our wholeness lies just outside of ourselves, in some future object, person, or experience. If only we could obtain it, this thirst tells us, then we would finally be satisfied. This thirst manifests in several distinct ways in our modern world. The most obvious is the craving for sense pleasures. This is the engine of our entire consumer culture. It is the thirst for the taste of a specific food, the feel of a luxurious fabric, the sound of a new album, the sight of an exotic beach. Advertising is the science of manufacturing and manipulating this thirst. It is designed to make you feel a sense of lack you didn't even know you had, and then present its product as the only way to quench that thirst. The endless scroll of social media feeds and online stores is a direct pipeline of tanha, a constant parade of things to want, places to be, and foods to eat, all reinforcing the subtle message that your present moment is not good enough as it is. A more subtle and perhaps more damaging form is the craving to be. This is not the desire to have something, but to become someone else. It is the thirst for a different identity. We see a curated image of a person online with the perfect body, the perfect career, the perfect family, and a painful craving arises to be that person, to inhabit that life. This fuels a pervasive status anxiety, a constant need to measure up, to perform, to construct our own curated identity for others to see. We are no longer just craving a new car. We are craving the identity of a person who drives such a car. This desperate thirst for a better, more validated self is a source of immense inner turmoil because it is a fundamental rejection of who we are in this moment. Finally, there is the craving for non-being. This is the thirst for escape, for annihilation of the present, painful experience. In its most extreme form, this manifests as suicidal ideation. But in our everyday lives, it takes the form of our endless quest for distraction and numbness. It is the desire to binge-watch an entire series to avoid feeling our own loneliness. It is the mindless scrolling through a phone to distract from a difficult task. It is the use of alcohol or drugs to blot out a painful reality. This craving for non-existence is a desperate attempt to escape the friction of dukkha, a deep desire for the current moment, with all its unpleasantness, to simply end. The other engine, the opposing force, is aversion or dosa. If craving is the magnet that pulls, aversion is the magnet that pushes. It is the energy of no, of rejection, of wanting something to cease. Like craving, aversion exists on a wide spectrum. At its mildest, it is simple irritation or annoyance. It's the feeling that arises when you are stuck in traffic, when someone interrupts you, when the internet is slow, when your favorite team loses. It is a low-grade tensing against the reality of the moment, a small internal tantrum that says, "This is not how it's supposed to be." Further up the scale, this irritation hardens into anger and resentment. This is the aversion we feel toward people we believe have wronged us. It is the anger that arises when we perceive an injustice. It is the simmering resentment we hold onto from old arguments and betrayals. This form of aversion is particularly toxic because it often involves the monkey mind, creating endless stories, replaying the offending event over and over, feeding the fire of our indignation until it becomes a consuming blaze. And perhaps the most common and destructive form of aversion is the one we direct at ourselves. This is the merciless voice of the inner critic. It is the self-loathing that arises when we make a mistake. It is the hatred we can feel toward our own bodies, our own personalities, our own perceived flaws. When you look in the mirror and feel disgust, that is aversion. When you berate yourself for feeling anxious or sad, that is aversion. You are treating your own inner experience as an enemy that must be attacked and destroyed. This internal warfare, this fundamental aversion to ourselves, is a primary driver of so much of our anxiety, depression, and suffering. There is a powerful and rather grim parable that illustrates the self-defeating nature of craving. A stray dog, starving and desperate, finds an old bone that has been picked clean by vultures and bleached by the sun. There is not a shred of meat or a drop of marrow left in it. But driven by its powerful thirst and hunger, the dog begins to chew on it frantically. It gnaws and grinds with all its might, but gets no nourishment. Its frantic effort, however, causes its own gums to tear and bleed. Tasting the warm metallic flavor of its own blood, the dog, in its delusion, believes it is finally getting sustenance from the bone. This taste spurs it to chew with even greater ferocity, causing more bleeding, which it mistakes for more nourishment. It becomes trapped in a vicious cycle of immense effort and self-inflicted pain, driven by the illusion that the object of its craving can save it, when in fact, the object is providing nothing but a catalyst for the dog's own suffering. We are that dog, the objects of our craving, the validation, the material goods, the fleeting pleasures of that dry bone. They hold no lasting intrinsic satisfaction. The brief thrill we get from them is often just the taste of our own wanting, our own adrenaline, our own frantic energy, and it leaves us just as hungry as before, and often more exhausted and wounded. So what is the way out? If we cannot satisfy our cravings and we cannot eliminate the things we are averse to, what can we do? The path is not to engage in a war with these powerful energies. The path is to meet them with the calm, non-judgmental light of mindfulness. When a powerful craving arises for food, for distraction, for approval, the practice is to pause. Instead of immediately reacting and feeding the impulse, we simply notice it. We acknowledge its presence without condemnation. Ah, there is craving. We feel it as a pure energy in the body, a tightness, a restlessness, an emptiness. We watch it as we would watch a cloud in the sky, knowing that it is not us and that it too will pass. The same is true for aversion. When the heat of irritation or anger begins to rise, we can meet it with this same mindful awareness. Ah, aversion is here. We feel the tension in the jaw, the heat in the chest. We observe the energy without becoming the energy. In this pause, this space between impulse and action, lies our freedom. We are no longer unconscious puppets. We are the conscious observer of the strings. By seeing these twin engines clearly, we begin to understand the mechanics of our own suffering. They are the forces that keep us chained to the past and anxious about the future. They are the puppet masters of the monkey mind. And understanding them leads us to a very practical and crucial question. When a negative event happens, when an object of our aversion appears in our lives, we feel an initial sting of pain that is unavoidable. But what happens next? What is the relationship between that initial, unavoidable pain and the prolonged suffering that often follows? The answer is found in one of the most practical and transformative metaphors in all of Buddhist teaching, the parable of the second arrow. Having identified the twin engines of our discontent, the pulling force of craving and the pushing force of aversion, we arrive at a point of profound practical importance. We can now examine the very mechanism of how suffering is created in real time. When life presents us with an experience we don't want, an object of our aversion, an initial sting of pain is felt. This is unavoidable. But what happens in the moments that follow determines whether that initial sting fades away or metastasizes into prolonged agony. This crucial distinction between unavoidable pain and optional suffering is captured in what is perhaps the single most practical and transformative metaphor in the entire Buddhist tradition, the parable of the second arrow. The teaching is beautifully simple. Imagine you are walking through a forest and you are struck in the arm by an arrow. The initial impact is sharp, painful, and real. This is the first arrow. It represents the unavoidable pains of life, the things that happen to us that are outside of our control. It is the headache that arrives without warning. It is the harsh word of criticism from a loved one. It is the rejection letter for a job you desperately wanted. It is the diagnosis from a doctor, the flat tire on a busy morning, the sudden death of a friend. These are the first arrows. They are an intrinsic part of the human condition. To be alive is to be subject to being struck by these arrows. There is no armor that can provide complete protection. This first arrow is what we can call pain. But what happens next is where we have a choice. The untaught person, the one whose mind is still a wild and reactive monkey, does not just feel the pain of the first arrow. Immediately after being struck, they take out a second arrow and they shoot it into themselves in the very same spot. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. It is the judgment, the blame, the fear, the anger, the self-pity. This second arrow is what transforms pain into suffering. Let us look at this process in detail. A colleague makes a critical comment about your work in a meeting. That is the first arrow. It stings. It's a real, unpleasant sensation. Now, watch for the second arrow. You leave the meeting and for the rest of the day, you shoot yourself with a volley of them. I'm so incompetent, you tell yourself. That's a second arrow of self-criticism. Everyone in that room must think I'm a fool. That's a third arrow of paranoia. I'm probably going to be fired. That's a fourth arrow of catastrophizing. What a jerk he is for saying that in public. That's a fifth arrow of blame and resentment, which keeps the wound fresh by replaying the event over and over. By the time you go to bed that night, the initial sting of the first arrow is long gone, but you are bleeding profusely from the dozen extra wounds you have inflicted upon yourself. The initial pain was temporary, but the suffering has become a prolonged narrative of failure and resentment. Consider another example. You wake up with a feeling of anxiety in your chest. That is the first arrow. It's an unpleasant but natural physiological and emotional sensation. The untrained mind immediately reaches for the second arrow. Oh no, why do I feel anxious? There must be something wrong with me. I hate feeling this way. I can't handle this feeling. This is going to ruin my whole day. This resistance, this judgment, this fear of the feeling itself is the second arrow. It adds a thick layer of mental anguish on top of the initial physical sensation. You are now suffering from your anxiety about being anxious. This pattern is everywhere. You feel a pang of loneliness, first arrow. You then tell yourself a story about how you are unlovable and will be alone forever, second arrow. You make a mistake, first arrow. You then call yourself stupid and worthless for hours afterward, second arrow. The world shoots the first arrow. We shoot the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. And it is these subsequent arrows that cause the vast majority of our mental and emotional suffering. In the original teaching, the Buddha explained it with striking clarity. He said that when an ordinary, untaught person experiences a painful feeling, they sorrow, they grieve, they lament, they beat their breast, and become distraught. He feels two feelings, the Buddha said, a physical one and a mental one. It is as if a man were pierced by an arrow, and, following that, were pierced by a second arrow. So that man feels the pain of two arrows. Then he offered the alternative. But when a well-taught noble disciple experiences a painful feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve, or lament. He feels one feeling, a physical one, but not a mental one. It is as if a man were pierced by an arrow, but was not, following that, pierced by a second arrow. So that man feels the pain of only one arrow. This is not a call to be unfeeling, to suppress our emotions, or to become a stoic robot. It is a deeply compassionate instruction on how to reduce our own suffering by half, or even more. It is an acknowledgement that pain is real and unavoidable, but it is also an empowering declaration that much of our suffering is optional. It is a habit we can unlearn. So how do we put down our bow? How do we stop shooting ourselves with that second arrow? The answer lies in the space that mindfulness creates. Through the practice of anchoring ourselves to the breath, we develop the ability to pause between the initial impact of the first arrow and our habitual, conditioned reaction. That pause is everything. In that space, we have a choice. When the first arrow of a painful feeling strikes, be it physical or emotional, the practice is to bring our awareness directly to the raw, physical sensations of it, without telling a story about it. If someone's words sting you, instead of immediately launching into the narrative of blame or self-pity, can you just for a moment feel the physical reality of that sting? Where is it in your body? Is it a tightness in your chest? A heat in your face? A knot in your stomach? The practice is to stay with this raw, wordless sensation. Observe its intensity, its texture, its vibration. Be curious about it. By doing this, we are grounding ourselves in the reality of the first arrow, which is just an impermanent, changing sensation. We are not giving the monkey mind the space and the fuel it needs to start its frantic storytelling, the process that manufactures the second arrow. When we simply observe the raw sensation of the first arrow, we discover something remarkable. Like all impermanent phenomena, it changes. It may intensify for a moment, but then it will begin to soften, to shift, to dissipate. By not adding the fuel of the second arrow, the fire of the first arrow naturally burns itself out. We learn that we can, in fact, bear the pain of the first arrow. It is the story of the second arrow that we tell ourselves is unbearable. This teaching places the power to end our suffering squarely in our own hands. We cannot control the world. We cannot stop the first arrows from flying. People will be unkind. Our bodies will fail us. Loss will visit our lives. But we can, with practice, learn to control our response. We can learn to put down our own bow and arrow. We can learn to nurse the wound of the first arrow with kindness and acceptance, rather than stabbing at it again and again with the daggers of our own mind. This analytical understanding is a powerful tool. Knowing the layout of our mental prison, dukkha, anicca, anatta, and understanding the mechanics of suffering, craving, aversion, and the second arrow is the foundation of wisdom. It is the map that shows us the way out. But a map, however accurate, is just ink on paper. it cannot provide the warmth needed for the journey. Analysis can diagnose the problem of a hardened heart, but it cannot, by itself, soften it. For that, we need to move from the realm of the head to the realm of the heart. We need to cultivate not just seeing clearly, but feeling kindly. We need to learn how to actively generate warmth, compassion, and love, and to direct that healing energy toward the very wounds we have just uncovered. This begins with the practice of what is known as loving kindness, or Metta. The journey we have taken so far has been one of deep seeing, of radical insight. With the light of wisdom, we have mapped the terrain of our own minds. We have diagnosed the pervasive friction of dukkha. We have witnessed the universal law of anicca, and we have investigated the elusive, process-like nature of anatta. We have uncovered the twin engines of craving and aversion and seen how we wound ourselves with the second arrow. This is the path of wisdom, and it is indispensable. It gives us the clarity to understand our predicament. But clarity alone is often not enough to heal a lifetime of conditioned pain. A brilliant diagnosis does not, by itself, soothe a fevered brow. For that, we must now pivot from the cool, clear light of the mind to the radiant warmth of the heart. We must learn not only to see our suffering clearly, but to hold it kindly. This is the practice of Metta, or loving kindness. In our culture, which often equates kindness with weakness and compassion with sentimentality, this practice can seem strange, even self-indulgent. We are taught that to be successful, to improve, we must be hard on ourselves. We have internalized a relentless inner critic, a drill sergeant in our heads that barks orders, points out every flaw, and tells us we are never good enough. We believe this harshness is what drives us forward. But the truth is, it is what keeps us frozen in fear and shame. Lasting, meaningful change never grows from a soil of self-hatred. It grows from a soil of safety, acceptance, and encouragement. Metta practice is the act of intentionally cultivating that fertile soil within ourselves. It is not a passive feeling that we hope will descend upon us. It is an active skill. It is the psychological equivalent of weight training, strengthening the muscle of unconditional friendly goodwill. It is a fierce tenderness, a powerful antidote to the poison of our own inner critic. The most radical, and for many the most difficult, part of this practice is that it begins with ourselves. We are often more willing to offer kindness to a stranger than we are to our own struggling heart. To direct loving kindness inward can feel selfish or narcissistic. But think of the safety instructions on an airplane. You must put on your own oxygen mask before assisting others. You cannot offer a drink from an empty cup. Self-compassion is not selfish. It is the necessary foundation for a sane and healthy mind, and the prerequisite for any genuine compassion for others. It is the act of finally acknowledging that you, with all your perceived flaws and imperfections, are just as deserving of care and kindness as anyone else on this earth. The practice itself, often called metta bhavana, or the cultivation of loving kindness, is simple and profound. You can do it as you lie in bed, after a few moments of settling your mind with the breath. The aim is to generate a feeling of warmth, of gentle friendship, and to direct it inward. It can be helpful at first to evoke this feeling by bringing to mind something for which it is easy to feel love. Perhaps it is a beloved pet, the memory of its unconditional affection. Perhaps it is a small child, innocent and open. Perhaps it is a memory of a time when you felt deeply cared for and safe. Let that feeling of warmth gather in the center of your chest, a soft, glowing light. And once you can feel a glimmer of that warmth, you begin to silently, gently, offer a series of phrases to yourself, like a heartfelt wish. The traditional phrases are a beautiful encapsulation of our deepest human needs. You begin by saying to yourself, "May I be safe." This is a wish for safety from all external dangers, but more importantly, for safety from the internal danger of your own harsh judgment and condemnation. It is a wish to find a place of refuge within your own being. Let the wish for safety permeate your body and mind. Then, you offer the phrase, "May I be happy." This is not a wish for a fleeting, superficial pleasure, but for a deep, authentic, and lasting happiness. It is the wish for a genuine sense of well-being, the kind that does not depend on external circumstances. It is the fundamental wish of every living creature. You are simply acknowledging that you too deserve this. Next, the phrase is, "May I be healthy." This is a wish for the health of the body, for freedom from sickness and pain, but it is also a wish for the health of the mind, for freedom from the fevers of anxiety, anger, and despair. It is a wish for wholeness. And finally, you offer the beautiful phrase, "May I live with ease." This is a direct wish for freedom from struggle, from the friction of dukkha. It is a wish that life may not feel like such a constant, uphill battle. It is a wish for grace, for flow, for a sense of peace with the unfolding of your life, whatever it may bring. You repeat these phrases gently, silently, over and over. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. Do not worry if you don't feel an overwhelming wave of love. That is not the point. The point is the offering. The point is the intention. You are planting seeds. Some days the ground will feel fertile. Other days it will feel like stone. You just keep planting the seeds, with patience and without expectation. You are gently rewiring your own brain, replacing the well-worn neural pathways of self-criticism with new pathways of self-compassion. Once you have established a foundation of loving kindness for yourself, you can begin to expand the circle. First, bring to mind a dear friend, a loved one, or a benefactor, someone for whom you feel natural gratitude and affection. Hold their image in your mind, and now direct the phrases toward them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Feel the natural warmth of your heart extending outwards. Next, and this is a crucial step, bring to mind a neutral person. This could be the cashier at the grocery store, the mail carrier, someone you see on your commute. It is a person you have no strong feelings about either way, and you offer them the same wishes. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. This practice begins to break down the artificial barriers we erect between people who matter to me and people who don't. It acknowledges our shared humanity. Then comes the most challenging and transformative stage, directing metta toward a difficult person. Gently bring to mind someone with whom you have conflict, someone who has hurt you. This is not about condoning their harmful actions or forcing a reconciliation. It is a practice for your own heart. It is an acknowledgement that their actions, however hurtful, likely arise from their own deep suffering, their own craving and aversion. Holding on to hatred for them is like drinking poison and hoping they will die. The practice of metta is the antidote. With whatever small amount of willingness you can muster, you offer the phrases, may you too be free from your suffering. May you too find peace. May you be happy. This act begins to dissolve the hardened resentments that imprison our own hearts. Finally, you expand the circle to encompass all beings everywhere, to friends, strangers, and enemies, to humans and animals, to all living things, without exception. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. Lest this seem like a passive, Pollyannish practice, consider the story of the raging elephant, Nalagiri. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, intending to murder the Buddha, got the elephant keepers to intoxicate a notoriously fierce elephant and release it onto the path where the Buddha was walking. As the elephant charged, screaming and destroying everything in its path, the Buddha's disciples panicked and fled, but the Buddha stood his ground, calm and unafraid. He did not prepare a weapon or a defense. He simply turned his full attention to the charging beast and radiated a powerful, unwavering field of pure, unconditional loving kindness. The story says that as the elephant entered this aura of metta, its rage began to subside. It slowed its charge, its eyes softened, and it eventually walked calmly to the Buddha and knelt at his feet. This story illustrates a profound truth. Metta is not weakness. It is an immense power, a force that can disarm hatred and fear, both within ourselves and in the world. Practicing metta is how we begin to heal the wounds that wisdom has revealed. It is the direct remedy for aversion, for the judging mind, for the self-inflicted pain of the second arrow. It is the beginning of learning to relate to ourselves and our experience, not with the harshness of a critic, but with the unconditional friendship of a warm and loving heart. This general state of goodwill is the foundation. But what happens when we take this loving energy and focus it specifically on the reality of suffering? When metta encounters pain, it transforms into something deeper, more active, and more engaged. It becomes compassion. If metta, loving kindness, is the sun that warms the entire landscape of our heart, then karuna, or compassion, is the focused ray of that sun that shines directly upon a place of pain, seeking to melt the ice of suffering. Where metta is the broad, gentle wish for all beings to be happy, karuna is the heart's specific trembling response when it encounters the reality that they are not. It is the active and courageous desire to see suffering relieved, both in ourselves and in others. It is vital, from the outset, to distinguish true compassion from its more common and distant cousin, to pity. Pity looks down from a position of imagined superiority. It says, "Oh, you poor, unfortunate thing. I am glad I am not you." Pity creates separation. It reinforces the boundary between the one who is suffering and the one who is observing. Compassion, on the other hand, does the exact opposite. It arises from the recognition of our shared humanity and our shared vulnerability to dukkha. It stands alongside the sufferer and says, I am with you in this. I recognize this pain. The very root of the word compassion means to suffer with. It is not about feeling sorry for someone. It is about feeling a deep connection to them through the universal reality of pain. Karuna dissolves boundaries. It is the courageous acknowledgement that the first arrow can strike any of us at any time. The ancient texts describe karuna as the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering. This is a beautiful and precise image. It is not a dramatic, sentimental sadness. It is a deep, resonant empathy that allows us to be touched by pain without being consumed by it. This requires immense strength. There is a concept sometimes called idiot compassion, which is the well-intentioned but misguided desire to simply remove all pain without wisdom, often enabling harmful behavior in the process. True karuna is wise. It is not afraid to be firm, to speak truth, to set boundaries. Its sole intention is the genuine, long-term relief of suffering, which sometimes requires difficult choices. It is the strong, steady hand of a surgeon, not the weeping of a bystander. Like Metta, the cultivation of karuna begins at home, with our own suffering. For so long, our habit has been to meet our own pain with aversion. When sadness or anxiety arises, we try to distract ourselves, to numb it, to push it away. We shoot ourselves with the second arrow of judgment. I shouldn't be feeling this. The practice of compassion invites a revolutionary new response. It asks us to turn toward our own pain and hold it with a fierce tenderness. When you feel the familiar ache of loneliness, or the sharp sting of failure, the practice is to pause, to place a hand on your own heart, and to offer the sincere wish, may I be free from this suffering. May I be gentle with myself in this pain. May I find peace. You are learning to become your own ally, your own compassionate friend. You are treating your own heart as you would a frightened child who has come to you for comfort. This is the foundation upon which all other compassion is built. Once we have begun to learn how to hold our own pain with this gentle strength, we can extend it outward. Bring to mind a person you love who you know is struggling. Perhaps they are ill, or going through a difficult time at work, or grieving a loss. Visualize them and their pain. Let your heart tremble with the reality of their struggle, and instead of just feeling helpless or sad, you actively generate the energy of karuna. You silently offer the powerful intention. May you be free from your suffering. May you find the strength to meet these challenges. May the causes of your pain cease. You are sending them not pity, but strength. You are holding them in a space of boundless, compassionate care. Now comes the great leap, the practice that has the power to fundamentally rewire our relationship to the world. We practice extending compassion to a difficult person, or even an enemy. This is perhaps the ultimate challenge for the heart. Bring to mind someone who has hurt you, someone whose actions you find contemptible. Our habitual response is blame, anger, and resentment, the energy of aversion. Karuna invites us to look deeper, with the eyes of wisdom we have been cultivating. Look beyond their harmful actions and ask, what is the suffering that is driving this person? What fear, what greed, what ignorance, what inner pain is causing them to act in this way? You begin to see that their hurtful behavior is a symptom of their own deep dukkha. They are trapped in the prison of their own monkey mind, relentlessly wounding themselves with their own second arrows. Their cruelty is a cry of their own pain. When we can see this, a profound shift can occur. It does not mean we excuse their actions. It does not mean we have to become their friend or allow them to continue harming us. It simply means we stop carrying the toxic burden of our own hatred. We can look upon them as a doctor might look upon a patient with a terrible, contagious disease. The doctor does not hate the patient, they hate the disease. The compassionate thought arises, I see that you are suffering deeply. I see that you are trapped. Just as I wish to be free from my own prison of suffering, may you too find a way to be free from yours. This is not forgiveness, not yet. It is the preparatory step of understanding, which dissolves the hardness of resentment and makes future forgiveness possible. It frees us from the chains of our own anger. There is a powerful metaphor the Buddha used to describe the quality of heart we are aiming to cultivate. He said we should develop a boundless, protective love for all beings, just as a mother would protect her only child at the risk of her own life. Let us reflect on this image. The love of a mother for her only child is not a weak or passive sentiment. It is fierce, it is unwavering, it is a force of nature. She will stand between her child and any danger, any threat, any suffering. Her love is a protective shield. Our practice is to develop this same quality of fierce, protective energy and to direct it not at a single person, but at the universal enemy of suffering itself. Wherever we see suffering in ourselves, in our friends, in our enemies, in strangers or compassionate heart, rises up to meet it with the fierce intention, may this being be protected. May this being be free from this pain. This practice is the ultimate antidote to the blame, fear, and separation that dominates so much of our inner and outer worlds. It breaks down the illusion of us versus them. It helps us to see the frightened, suffering being behind the angry mask of the boss, the insecure person behind the arrogant facade of a rival. When we see a homeless person on the street, we don't just see a social problem. We see an individual being pierced by the first arrows of cold, hunger, and indifference. And we can offer the silent wish, may you be free from this suffering. We are transformed from passive observers into active participants in the healing of the world, one silent, compassionate thought at a time. Metta, then, is the wish for all to find the causes of happiness. Karuna is the wish for all to be free from the causes of suffering. Together, they form a powerful, radiant warmth that can heal our own hearts and change how we relate to every being we encounter. But a heart that is trained only to look at pain, even compassionately, can become heavy. It can lead to a state of burnout or sorrow. To create a truly balanced and resilient heart, a heart capable of boundless joy, we must also train ourselves in the art of celebration. We must learn to counteract the subtle poison of envy and comparison by actively rejoicing in the happiness and good fortune of others. This leads us to the third of these great heart practices, the cultivation of sympathetic joy, or mudita. If loving kindness, metta, is the gentle rain that nurtures all life without distinction, and compassion, karuna, is the focused care we offer to a wilting plant, then there must also be a practice for the heart when it encounters a flower in full, glorious bloom. This third great quality of the heart, the radiant counterpart to compassion, is mudita, which can be translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy. If compassion is the ability to share in another's sorrow, mudita is the ability to share in another's joy. It is the wholehearted and unselfish celebration of the happiness and good fortune of others. In our modern competitive culture, this may be the most challenging heart practice of all. We are conditioned from a young age to compare, to compete, to measure our own worth against the achievements of others. This conditioning has been put into overdrive by the advent of social media, which functions as a global stage for the curated performance of success. As we scroll through our feeds, we are inundated with images of our friends' beautiful vacations, our colleagues' promotions, acquaintances' picture-perfect weddings, and strangers' stunning accomplishments. And with each image, a subtle toxic poison can seep into the heart. The name of this poison is envy. It is the whisper of the monkey mind that says, why them? Why not me? It is the sinking feeling of lack, the quiet resentment that another's happiness somehow diminishes our own. This feeling of envy is a potent form of dukkha, a sharp and painful friction against reality. Mudita is its direct and powerful antidote. At its core, envy springs from a deep-seated belief in scarcity. It is the unconscious assumption that happiness, success, recognition, and love are all finite resources, like slices of a single pie. From this perspective, if someone else gets a large and wonderful slice, there is necessarily less left for us. Life becomes a zero-sum game. Another's victory feels like our loss. Their light seems to cast a shadow upon our own lives. This scarcity mindset traps us in a state of perpetual competition and anxiety, making it impossible to feel genuinely happy for anyone, because every piece of good news for them feels like a subtle threat to us. Mudita invites us into a radically different way of seeing the world. It is the cultivation of an abundance mindset. It understands that happiness is not a finite commodity. It is not a pie to be divided. It is much more like candlelight. Imagine a room with 100 unlit candles. You have one candle that is burning. If you use your flame to light the other 99 candles, does your own flame diminish? In fact, the total amount of light, warmth, and beauty in the room increases 100-fold. This is the logic of mudita. Another person's success, another person's joy, another person's good fortune does not deplete the world's supply of happiness. It adds to it. And by learning to share in their joy, we learn to warm ourselves by their fire. Their happiness does not take from us. It offers us an opportunity to expand our own capacity for joy. Like the other heart practices, mudita is a skill that can be intentionally cultivated. The practice is to notice moments of joy and success in others, and to consciously join in their celebration. We can begin with someone for whom this is easy. Think of a dear friend who calls you with wonderful news, or a child who is squealing with pure, unadulterated laughter. The practice is to consciously drop your own preoccupations for a moment, and to fully tune into their experience. Let their smile bring a genuine smile to your own face. Feel their excitement in your own body. Instead of just saying, "That's great," you can take a moment to silently and sincerely offer the wish, "I am so happy for you. May this joy and good fortune be a source of true well-being for you. May your happiness continue and increase." You are intentionally connecting your heart to theirs, sharing in the feast of their happiness. The world provides us with an endless laboratory for this practice. As you go about your day, you might see a young couple, obviously in love, walking hand in hand. The habitual mind might feel a pang of loneliness or cynicism. The mind trained in mudita sees this as an opportunity. How wonderful for them. May they cherish this beautiful feeling. You might read a news story about an artist or a scientist who has made a major breakthrough. Instead of feeling a sense of your own inadequacy, you can practice mudita. How amazing that the world has a person with such talent. May their work bring benefit to many. Every moment of observed happiness, no matter how small or distant, becomes an invitation to practice. The truly advanced and transformative stage of mudita is to apply it when the poison of envy is already present. Perhaps a colleague who you feel is a rival gets the promotion you wanted. The first arrow of disappointment strikes, and the second arrow of envy is immediately knocked in your bow. The practice here is not to force yourself to feel a joy that isn't there. That would be dishonest. The first step is to mindfully acknowledge the envy itself. Ah, there is the feeling of envy. There is the tightness in my chest. There is this scarcity mindset. You observe this feeling with kindness, without judging yourself for having it. Then, you can gently question the underlying belief. Is it really true that their success prevents my own? And finally, you can try to generate even the smallest spark of genuine goodwill. It might not be a bonfire of joy, but perhaps you can manage, I acknowledge, the hard work you put in. May you enjoy the results of your efforts. This is an incredibly powerful practice for dissolving the ego's grip and freeing yourself from the bitterness of comparison. Imagine a vast and silent desert. In one corner, there is a small, humble oasis with a few palm trees and a tiny spring of clear water. It offers life and shade to the few weary travelers who happen to find it. Miles away, there is another oasis, a magnificent and sprawling paradise with hundreds of lush trees and a vast, shimmering lake that can be seen from afar. The small oasis does not look upon the large one with envy. It does not lament its own smallness. It does not feel that the abundance of the large oasis makes its own spring any less vital. It simply continues to be what it is, an oasis. It offers its life-giving water without comparison, without resentment. Its own intrinsic value is not determined by or diminished by the greatness of another. We too can learn to be like that oasis, to appreciate our own unique worth and to celebrate the abundance we see elsewhere, knowing that it takes nothing away from us. When you think about it, mudita is a revolutionary strategy for happiness. If your happiness depends only on good things happening to you, your opportunities for joy are, by nature, quite limited and sporadic. But if you can learn to feel joy when good things happen to anyone, your friends, your neighbors, strangers in the news, people all over the world, then your opportunities for happiness become virtually limitless. At any given second of any given day, someone, somewhere, is overcoming an obstacle, achieving a dream, falling in love, welcoming a new life, or simply feeling a moment of profound peace. By training the heart in mudita, we create a channel through which we can tap into this boundless, global reservoir of joy. It is the ultimate way to ensure that our own heart is never impoverished. With mudita, we have now explored the three great active qualities of the heart. Metta, loving kindness, is the gentle wish for all beings to be happy and well. Karuna, compassion, is the courageous wish for all beings to be free from suffering. And mudita, sympathetic joy, is the celebratory wish that the happiness of all beings may increase. These three practices, working in concert, create a heart that is immensely powerful, resilient, and loving. Yet, like any powerful forces, they can become unbalanced if not held within a larger container of wisdom. Our love can become selfish attachment. Our compassion can collapse into overwhelming grief. Our joy can become giddy and ungrounded excitement. To hold these three beautiful energies in a state of perfect, unshakable balance, we need a fourth and final quality of the heart. We need the vast, calm, and steadying influence of equanimity, or upekkha. We have cultivated a heart of loving kindness, metta, that wishes for the happiness of all. We have explored the trembling of that heart in the face of pain, karuna, the wish for all to be free from suffering. And we have learned to celebrate the good fortune of others with mudita, or sympathetic joy. These three qualities, when practiced together, create a heart that is warm, engaged, and deeply connected to the world. But like any powerful energies, they require a fourth, final quality to bring them into perfect, unshakable balance. This culminating virtue, the calm center around which the other three revolve, is upekkha, or equanimity. Of all the heart practices, equanimity is perhaps the most misunderstood. It is often confused with its near enemy, indifference. Indifference is a cold, sterile, and withdrawn state. It is a shutting down of the heart, a defense mechanism that says, "I don't care, this doesn't affect me." Indifference creates distance. It is a form of aversion. Equanimity is the exact opposite. It is not born of a cold heart, but of a heart that is so open, so vast, and so filled with wisdom that it can hold the entirety of life's joys and sorrows without being thrown off balance. Equanimity is not apathy. It is the pinnacle of engaged and courageous caring. It is the spacious, steady, and peaceful mind that can look upon the unfolding chaos and beauty of the world with a calm and loving presence. Imagine a skilled and compassionate surgeon in an emergency room. A patient is brought in with a life-threatening injury. The surgeon feels immense compassion, karuna, and has a powerful wish for the patient to be well, metta. They apply all of their skill with focused attention, but during the operation, they do not allow themselves to be overwhelmed by grief or anxiety. Their hands remain steady. Their judgment remains clear. This is equanimity in action. They care deeply, but their care is not a messy, clinging attachment to a particular outcome. It is this balance that allows them to perform their life-saving work effectively. If they were to fall apart every time a patient was in peril, they would be of no use to anyone. Equanimity, therefore, is not a lack of feeling. It is the strength to feel fully without being drowned by your feelings. At its core, equanimity is the embodiment of the wisdom we have been cultivating. It is the deep, cellular understanding of anicca, impermanence. The mind with equanimity knows that pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute are the natural, unavoidable tides of life. These are called the 8 worldly winds, and they are constantly blowing. The untrained mind is like a small, unmoored boat tossed violently about by every gust. A gust of praise comes, and we are lifted high on a wave of pride. A gust of blame follows, and we are plunged into a trough of despair. Equanimity is the practice of building a deep, heavy keel for our boat. The winds still blow, and the waves still rise and fall on the surface, but our center of gravity is low and steady. We are no longer at the mercy of the changing weather of circumstance. The practice of cultivating equanimity is more of a deep contemplation than an active generation of feeling like the other 3 heart practices. It is a practice of seeing things as they are. We can begin by observing the 8 worldly winds in our own daily life. When something pleasant happens, you receive a compliment, you finish a project successfully, you enjoy a delicious meal, notice the pleasant feeling that arises. Enjoy it fully, but also gently remind yourself, this is impermanent, this feeling will pass. This is not to diminish the joy, but to keep from clinging to it. Conversely, when something unpleasant happens, you receive criticism, you make a mistake, you feel physical. Pay notice the sting of that first arrow, but then, instead of firing the second, you can observe the feeling with the wise thought, this too is impermanent. This feeling will pass. This creates a spaciousness around the pain, robbing it of its seeming solidity. A profound practice for developing equanimity, especially in our relationships, is the contemplation on the law of cause and effect, or karma. The teaching states, all beings are the owners of their actions, the heirs of their actions. Their actions are the womb from which they are born, and the ground upon which they stand. This is a recognition of the radical autonomy of every individual. As much as we may love someone, we cannot make their choices for them. We cannot walk their path for them. We can offer our love, our support, our wisdom, our help, but ultimately, their happiness and their suffering will arise from their own choices and actions. Understanding this helps us to let go of the immense and exhausting burden of trying to control the people in our lives. It frees us from the anxiety of needing them to be a certain way for us to be happy. We can love them fully and unconditionally, while also respecting their freedom to be who they are, even when we disagree with their choices. This is not indifference, it is the deepest form of respect. We can use intentional phrases to cultivate this state. When thinking of those we love, especially when we are worried about them, we can practice with the thought, I care about you deeply, but I cannot prevent all your suffering. Your happiness and unhappiness arise from your own actions. I will support you, but I cannot walk your path for you. I wish you the strength to find peace. This is a powerful letting go. It allows us to love more purely, without the baggage of control and expectation. Imagine a great, ancient mountain. It has stood for millennia. The winds howl against its slopes, the rains lash its face, the summer sun beats down upon its peaks, and the winter snows blanket it in ice. Storms rage, and calm, sunny days follow. Through it all, the mountain remains utterly, profoundly itself. It does not get angry at the wind or overjoyed by the sun. It is not indifferent to the weather. It is fully present to all of it, feeling the full force of every season, but its deep, solid, grounded nature is unshaken. The practice of equanimity is the cultivation of this mountain-like quality in the mind. The storms of life will come, the winds of praise and blame will blow, but our deep, abiding awareness, our peaceful core, can remain steady and unmoved. Equanimity is the quality that perfects and protects the other three divine abodes. It ensures that our loving kindness does not become selfish, grasping attachment. We can love fully, but when loss inevitably comes, as Anika dictates it must, equanimity allows us to grieve without being destroyed. It ensures that our compassion for the world's suffering does not collapse into what is called compassion fatigue or overwhelming sorrow. Equanimity provides the spaciousness to care deeply and act effectively without drowning in the ocean of pain. And it ensures that our sympathetic joy does not become giddy excitement or a subtle form of jealousy. It allows us to celebrate the happiness of others with a calm and stable heart. With equanimity, the heart finds its true home, a state of boundless, wise, and unshakable peace. Having cultivated the four immeasurables loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, we have now furnished our inner world with the most beautiful qualities imaginable. We have a mind that is lit by wisdom and a heart that is warmed by love. We are now fully equipped for our journey. We have our map, and our heart is full of provisions. It is time now to turn our attention to the specific terrain of our practice, particularly to the common obstacles that arise to block our path, the uninvited guests, who so often appear in the quiet moments before we fall asleep. This brings us to a classic and highly practical teaching, the 5 hindrances. Having cultivated the mind of wisdom and the heart of love, we are now like a well-prepared traveler, equipped with both a map and a full canteen for the journey inward. We have our anchor in the breath, our insight into the nature of reality, and our capacity for boundless goodwill. Now, we must turn our attention to the actual terrain of the path, and specifically to the common obstacles that arise to block our way. The teachings of the Buddha provide an astonishingly precise and practical field guide to these obstacles. They are known as the 5 hindrances, or the nivaranas. Think of your mind as a quiet guest house, and you are the innkeeper, hoping for a night of peace. Just as you are settling in, a series of uninvited guests arrive, each with their own particular brand of disruption. These 5 hindrances are these guests. They are the 5 primary patterns of restless energy that cloud the mind, obscure our inner light, and prevent us from finding the deep stillness we seek, especially in the sacred, silent hours before sleep. Our task is not to violently throw them out into the street, which would only create more commotion. Our task is to become a wise innkeeper, to learn to recognize each guest as they appear at the door, to understand their nature, and to know, with skillful kindness, how to handle them so they do not take over the entire house. The first guest to arrive is often sensual desire. This is the mind of wanting, the energy of craving in its purest form. This is not limited to sexual desire, but extends to a craving for any pleasant experience through the 5 senses. As you lie in bed, this guest whispers tantalizing suggestions in your ear. It dangles images of the delicious food you could be eating. It replays the pleasure of a movie you enjoyed. It has you mentally scrolling through online shops. Or it sends your mind spinning off into elaborate fantasies about a future vacation. This guest pulls your attention away from the simple, quiet reality of the present moment and into a vibrant but agitated world of if only. It creates a subtle but persistent restlessness, a feeling that the present moment is lacking and that satisfaction lies somewhere else. The antidote to this guest is a gentle application of the wisdom of impermanence, Anika. We can silently acknowledge, desire is here. Then we can reflect. Even if I were to get this thing I desire, that pleasure would also be fleeting. It would not bring lasting peace. We then gently, without force, escort our attention back to the simple, non-sensational reality of the breath, which is available to us right now. Soon after, a second, more fiery guest may appear at the door. This is ill will, or aversion. This is the energy of no, the mind of rejection, anger, and hatred. This guest is often loud and argumentative. It arrives replaying an argument you had during the day, fuming about an injustice you saw on the news, or stewing in resentment toward a person who has wronged you. It fills the mind with a hot, searing, and toxic energy that is the absolute enemy of restful sleep. You can feel its presence as a tightness in your jaw, a clenching in your fists, a burning in your chest. The direct and powerful antidote to this volatile guest is the practice of metta, loving kindness. When you recognize that ill will has taken over the house, you can pause and begin to generate the cooling balm of metta. First, offer it to yourself. May I be free from this anger. May I be peaceful. Then, when you feel even a little bit of that warmth, you can try to extend it towards the person or situation causing the anger, not to condone their actions, but to free your own heart, recognizing their own deep suffering. You meet the fire of hatred with the cool water of loving kindness. Perhaps the most subtle and deceptive guest is the third one, sloth and torpor. This is not the pleasant tiredness that leads to deep sleep. This is a heavy, dull, sinking state of mind. It is a mental fog, a spiritual lethargy. Sloth is the laziness of the mind, its unwillingness to make an effort. Torpor is the drowsiness, the thick, swampy quality that can overtake you. When this guest arrives, your attention on the breath becomes hazy and weak. The mind doesn't have the energy to be restless. Instead, it just drifts into a murky, semi-conscious state of dull fantasy. This state is a great impostor of peace, but it has no clarity or wisdom in it. The antidote to this heavy guest is the conscious arousal of energy. You can brighten your attention, making the focus on the breath more sharp and precise for a few moments, as if turning up a dimmer switch. You can reflect on your motivation for practicing, reminding yourself of the value of a clear and peaceful mind. You can even open your eyes for a moment, or adjust your posture to gently re-energize the body. You meet the fog with a focused beam of light. The fourth guest is often the one we are most familiar with, the life of the party for the monkey mind. This is restlessness and worry. This is a two-part guest. Restlessness is the bouncing off the walls, energy, the mind that cannot settle anywhere for more than a second. Worry, or its partner, regret, is the mind that gets stuck in anxious loops about the future or guilty loops about the past. This is the classic state of insomnia, where the body is exhausted, but the mind is running a marathon. It is the what-if mind, the planning mind, the rehashing mind. It fills the guest house with a frantic, buzzing energy. The primary antidote for this scattered guest is the one we know well, returning again and again to the steady, rhythmic anchor of the breath. Each conscious return to the simple sensation of rising and falling is an act of soothing the frantic mind. For the specific loops of worry and regret, the heart practices of compassion and forgiveness for ourselves are essential. We meet the frantic energy with a calm, grounding presence. Finally, the fifth guest may arrive, a shadowy figure that questions the whole endeavor. This is doubt. This guest is a cynic, a skeptic. It whispers in your ear, "Is this really working? You're not doing it right. Your mind is too busy. This is just a waste of time. There's probably a better, faster technique you should be trying." Doubt attacks our confidence and drains our motivation. It creates a state of inner conflict and indecision that makes any settled practice impossible. The antidote to doubt is to cultivate what is called wise confidence. This is not blind faith, but a trust that is rooted in your own experience, however small. You can recall a moment, even a fleeting one, where you felt a sense of peace or clarity from the practice. You can remember the logic of the teachings, and sometimes the most skillful approach is to simply treat doubt like any other mental object. You acknowledge it without getting into an argument with it. Ah, the guest of doubt has arrived. You notice it, you name it, and you gently return to the breath anyway, letting the doubt sit in the corner without giving it any more energy. To become a wise innkeeper of the mind is the practice. You stand at the door of your awareness, and you learn the faces of these five guests. Ah, this feeling of wanting. This is sensual desire. This heat and anger. This is ill will. This heavy fogginess. This is sloth and torpor. This racing, anxious energy. This is restlessness and worry. This feeling of, what's the point? This is doubt. The simple act of recognizing and naming the hindrance is profoundly liberating. It separates you from the state itself. You are no longer an angry person. You are the awareness that is observing the guest of anger. In that space, you have the freedom to apply the appropriate antidote with wisdom and kindness. As we become more skilled at recognizing these guests, we might begin to wonder where they get their energy from. In our modern world, one of the primary sources of fuel for restlessness, desire, and the other hindrances is our constant, often unconscious, engagement with the digital world. The endless stream of information, entertainment, and social comparison from our phones and screens acts as a superhighway for these disruptive mental states. To truly establish a peaceful guesthouse within, we must therefore turn a wise and discerning eye toward our relationship with the technology that fills our lives. As we become more adept at recognizing the 5 hindrances, those uninvited guests of desire, ill will, dullness, restlessness, and doubt, we may start to notice that our modern world seems custom-built to keep their guest rooms perpetually occupied, and there is perhaps no greater catalyst for these hindrances, no environment more perfectly engineered to provoke and sustain them, than the glowing screen you hold in your hand. Our digital devices, and the worlds they contain, have become the new landscape for the monkey mind, a vast electronic jungle with endless branches for it to swing from, keeping it in a state of constant, agitated arousal. To find peace in the digital age, we must first become unflinchingly honest about the nature of these tools. They are not neutral windows onto the world. The platforms and applications that consume so much of our attention have been meticulously engineered by some of the brightest minds of our generation, with a single overriding goal: to capture and hold your attention for as long as possible. Your well-being, your peace of mind, your ability to sleep soundly, these are not factors in their business model. Your sustained engagement is. To achieve this, these platforms have become masters at exploiting the very mechanisms of the monkey mind that we have been exploring. They operate on a system of intermittent variable rewards, the same neurological principle that makes slot machines so addictive. The little red notification icon, the unpredictable possibility of a new like, a new comment, a new message, each one is a small gamble, a tiny pull of the lever that delivers a microdose of the neurotransmitter dopamine, the chemical of wanting and seeking. This trains us, at a level far below our conscious awareness, to compulsively check, to refresh, to scroll, caught in a dopamine-seeking loop that generates a constant, low-grade restlessness. The algorithm learns you. It learns what outrages you and feeds your ill will with political news that confirms your biases. It learns what you desire and fills your feed with products and lifestyles that amplify your craving. It notices what makes you feel inadequate and shows you images that fuel your doubt and comparison. It is, in essence, a personalized hindrance-generating machine. Furthermore, this digital world creates a profound illusion of connection while often deepening our sense of actual isolation. We can have thousands of friends or followers and yet feel profoundly lonely as we lie in bed at night. This is because digital connection is often a disembodied, curated affair. We are not sharing our vulnerable, authentic presence with another human being. We are observing the highlight reel of their projected persona and broadcasting our own in return. This lack of genuine, embodied presence, the kind that involves shared silence, subtle body language, and mutual vulnerability, can leave us feeling starved for true contact, a hunger that no amount of online interaction can satisfy. Given this reality, if we wish to create the inner conditions for a peaceful night's sleep, we must become strategic. We must create a sanctuary in time and space that is protected from this constant digital intrusion. This leads to one of the most powerful and practical habits we can cultivate, the practice of a digital sunset. On a purely physiological level, the science is clear. The blue spectrum light emitted from our screens actively suppresses the production of melatonin, the hormone that signals to our body that it is time to sleep. Using a phone in bed is like shining a miniature sun into your eyes, telling your brain to stay awake and alert. But the mental impact is even more significant. The content we consume in the hour before sleep does not simply vanish when we turn off the device. It becomes the mental residue that fuels the mind's activity throughout the night. If you spend the last hour of your day scrolling through stressful news articles, engaging in online arguments, or envying the lives of others on social media, you are essentially feeding your monkey mind a potent cocktail of agitation, anger, and desire. You are loading the bow with dozens of second arrows, and then wondering why your mind will not be still when your head hits the pillow. A digital sunset is a conscious, compassionate act of creating a buffer zone between your engaged, digital life and your quiet, restorative sleep. It is simple to implement. You choose a specific time, perhaps 1 hour or even 2 hours before you intend to be asleep, and at that time, all screens are turned off. The phone is put away, ideally in another room, so you are not tempted. The laptop is closed. The television goes dark. This is not a punishment or a restriction. It is a profound gift of peace you are giving to your own nervous system. It is the creation of a sacred space, a time for your mind to gently power down, to digest the day, and to come home to itself. At first, this practice can feel jarring. You will notice the strength of the habit, the automatic reach for the phone. You may feel a sense of restlessness, a fear of missing out. This is the withdrawal from the dopamine loop. But if you can stay with that discomfort, you will rediscover a different quality of time, You can fill this newly created space with activities that soothe the mind rather than stimulate it. You could read a physical book, allowing your mind to follow a single, linear narrative. You could listen to calm, instrumental music. You could do some gentle stretching, releasing the physical tensions of the day. You could write in a journal, pouring out the mental clutter onto the page so you don't have to carry it to bed. You could have a real conversation with a person you live with, sharing a moment of genuine presence. Or you could simply sit in silence and practice watching your breath, allowing the ripples of the day to slowly settle. Beyond the evening ritual, we can bring this same mindfulness to our technology use throughout the day, which will make the digital sunset far easier. The core practice is to transform an unconscious habit into a conscious choice. The impulse to pick up the phone is usually automatic. The practice is to insert a single, conscious breath before you act. In that breath, that sacred pause, you can ask yourself a simple question. Why? Why am I picking up this phone right now? Am I seeking specific information? Or am I feeling bored, lonely, or anxious and seeking a distraction? What do I truly need in this moment? Would a few deep breaths, a short walk, or a glass of water serve me better than a mindless scroll? This simple inquiry short-circuits the addictive loop and puts you back in the driver's seat of your own attention. Imagine taking on a one-week challenge. No screens after 9 p.m. The first night might be difficult, filled with a phantom sense of restlessness. You might wander around your home, unsure of what to do with yourself. But by the third or fourth night, something begins to shift. You might find yourself enjoying the quiet texture of a book, or noticing the taste of a cup of herbal tea for the first time. You might find that your mind feels less sticky, less cluttered as you lie down to sleep. You may notice that you are falling asleep more easily, and that the quality of your sleep feels deeper, more restorative. By the end of the week, the thought of taking your phone to bed with you might start to seem absurd, like inviting a loud, chaotic stranger to share your pillow. Our digital devices are powerful tools. They are not inherently good or evil, but they are tools that have been designed to be deeply compelling and, if used unconsciously, deeply disruptive to our peace of mind. By reclaiming our attention, by creating sacred periods of disconnection, and by turning our usage into a conscious choice, we transform our relationship with technology from one of passive consumption to one of skillful engagement. This principle of skillful engagement, however, applies to more than just our screens. We are consuming things all day long. We consume food, we consume news, we consume conversations. We consume the very energy of the environments we are in. To build a truly resilient and peaceful mind, we must now broaden our lens and apply this same mindful discernment to everything we take in. Having turned our mindful attention to the digital world, we begin to see that our relationship with our screens is just one small part of a much larger pattern. All day, every day, from the moment we wake to the moment we fall asleep, we are consuming. We are constantly taking in the world through our senses, and every sight, every sound, every conversation, every piece of information we ingest becomes the very substance of our thoughts and emotions. There is a simple and profound truth that applies as much to the mind as it does to the body. You are what you eat. If you nourish your body with wholesome, life-giving food, it will be healthy and vibrant. If you feed it a steady diet of poison, it will become sick and weak. The mind is no different. The peace, or lack thereof, that you experience as you lie in bed at night is a direct reflection of the mental diet you have been feeding yourself throughout the day. Let us expand our understanding of consumption beyond just the food on our plate. Consider, first, the information and media you consume. Our world is saturated with information, but not all of it is nourishing. The modern news cycle, for example, is largely driven by a model that prioritizes fear, outrage, and conflict, because these emotions are highly effective at capturing our attention. The compulsive habit of doom scrolling, the act of endlessly scrolling through bad news, is like force-feeding your mind a diet of pure anxiety and despair. Similarly, consider the entertainment you choose. The movies, television shows, podcasts, and music you consume all have a distinct energetic flavor. Are they cynical, violent, and agitating? Do they leave you feeling tense, jaded, or emotionally drained? Or are they uplifting, insightful, calming, and inspiring? This is not a moral judgment. A violent movie is not inherently bad, but it is an undeniable truth that consuming 2 hours of simulated violence and conflict will have a different effect on your nervous system than consuming 2 hours of a peaceful nature documentary. The question we must ask is not, is this good or bad? But rather, how does this make me feel? What is this feeding my mind? Next, consider the conversations you consume. The people we speak with are a primary source of our mental nourishment or toxicity. Think about the quality of your daily interactions. Are they, for the most part, supportive, kind, and constructive? Or do you find yourself frequently engaged in conversations that are dominated by gossip, complaining, and cynicism? Gossip is a particularly potent form of mental poison. When we engage in it, we are consuming and spreading ill will. We are feeding the part of ourselves that feels a subtle, superior pleasure in the misfortune of others. Complaining is another toxic habit. When we constantly complain or listen to the complaints of others, we are actively strengthening the neural pathways of victimhood and negativity. We are training our minds to see only what is wrong with the world. In contrast, conversations that are filled with encouragement, genuine curiosity, and wisdom are like superfoods for the mind. They nourish the parts of us that are hopeful, kind, and open. Finally, consider the very environments you consume. We are porous beings, and we absorb the energy of the spaces we inhabit. A cluttered, disorganized home can contribute to a cluttered and disorganized mind. A workplace filled with noise, tension, and high pressure has a tangible effect on our inner state. While we may not always have complete control over our surroundings, we can still make conscious choices. We can take a few minutes to tidy the one room we have control over. We can choose to spend our lunch break walking in a park instead of sitting at a noisy desk. We can intentionally seek out moments of quiet and natural beauty. These actions provide our minds with a space to breathe, feeding it a diet of calm and order. A powerful model for understanding this practice is the art of mindful eating. The typical way of eating is unconscious, gulping down food while watching a screen, barely tasting what we are putting in our mouths. Mindful eating is the opposite. It is the practice of eating slowly, deliberately. It involves looking at the food, smelling it, and truly tasting each bite. It involves feeling the sensations in the body. It involves reflecting with gratitude on the sun, the soil, the rain, and all the people whose labor brought this food to our plate. We can apply this exact same model to our consumption of information. Instead of mindlessly gulping down a fire hose of digital content, we can learn to consume information mindfully. We can choose one article or one idea and chew on it, reflecting on it deeply. Before we consume a piece of media, we can pause and ask, is this truly nourishing for my mind right now? And after we have consumed it, we can notice its aftertaste. Does it leave us feeling more agitated, or more at peace, more cynical, or more hopeful? There is a beautiful and widely told parable, often attributed to the Cherokee people, that illustrates this principle perfectly. An elder is teaching his grandson about life. A great fight is going on inside me, he says to the boy. It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, and lies. The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, empathy, generosity, and truth. This same fight is going on inside you, and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." This story is the key to mindful consumption. The countless choices we make each day, the websites we visit, the people we talk to, the shows we watch, the thoughts we choose to entertain, are all acts of feeding one of the two wolves within us. The state of our inner world is not a random accident. It is the direct and unavoidable result of our feeding habits. If you spend your day feeding the wolf of anger and envy with outrage-inducing news and gossip-filled conversations, you cannot be surprised when that is the wolf that shows up to howl in your mind at night. If, however, you make a conscious effort to feed the wolf of peace and kindness with inspiring reading, supportive friendships, and moments of quiet contemplation, you are creating the causes and conditions for that wolf to lie down peacefully within you as you sleep. This is not about creating a sterile, sanitized bubble for ourselves or avoiding all of life's difficulties. We cannot and should not ignore the suffering of the world, but it is about shifting from being a passive receptacle for whatever the world throws at us, to becoming a wise and active curator of our own mental and emotional landscape. It is about recognizing that every act of consumption is a choice, and every choice has a consequence for our inner peace. Choosing to turn off the inflammatory talk show and listen to calming music is an act of feeding the good wolf. Choosing to put down the gossip magazine and pick up a book of wisdom is an act of feeding the good wolf. Choosing to end a complaining phone call and go for a walk in nature is an act of feeding the good wolf. Each of these conscious choices, this act of selecting what is wholesome and turning away from what is not, is also, by its very nature, an act of release. To choose one thing is to let go of another. This intentional process of selection and release is one of the most powerful and liberating skills we can develop. It is the very essence of the art of letting go. As we become more mindful of what we choose to consume, we naturally begin a parallel and equally important practice: choosing what we will no longer carry. Every time we choose an uplifting book over a gossip magazine, or a quiet walk over an angry news program, we are performing a subtle but powerful act of release. This process of intentional release, of unburdening the mind, is a skill in itself. It is the profound and liberating art of letting go. In our culture, the idea of letting go is often misunderstood. It can be perceived as an act of weakness, of giving up, of passive defeat. But from the perspective of inner freedom, letting go is one of the most courageous, intelligent, and powerful actions we can ever take. Most of us live our lives like a person with a clenched fist. We are desperately holding on to things we believe are essential for our survival and happiness. We clench our fist around our need to control outcomes. We clench it around our cherished opinions and identities. We clench it around our memories of past hurts and our detailed plans for the future. We believe this constant tension, this white-knuckled grip on reality, is what gives us strength and security. But if you were to physically clench your fist as tightly as you could for an entire day, you would not feel strong. You would feel exhausted, pained, and utterly depleted. Our minds are no different. The constant act of holding on is the primary source of our mental tension and spiritual exhaustion. Letting go is the courageous act of unclenching that fist. It is the moment we realize that the thing we are holding on to is not a precious gem, but a burning coal, and that our own grip is what is causing the pain. Let us look at some of the heavy things we are clinging to. First, we cling to control. We carry a detailed blueprint in our minds of how life should unfold, how others should behave, and how we should feel. When reality, in its wild and unpredictable nature, inevitably deviates from our blueprint, we suffer. We try to manage every outcome, pre-solve every problem, and steer the river of life into the narrow channel of our own desires. This is an impossible and deeply exhausting task. The practice of letting go is the wisdom of the farmer. The farmer can diligently prepare the soil, plant the seed, provide water, and remove the weeds. She does everything in her power, but she cannot control the weather. She cannot command the sun to shine or the rain to fall. There comes a point where she must surrender her crop to the larger forces of nature. Letting go of control is this kind of surrender. It is doing our best with diligence and care, and then releasing our attachment to the result, trusting that we can meet whatever comes with the resources we have. We also cling, with ferocious tenacity, to the past. The monkey mind loves to swing from the branches of yesterday. Sometimes it clings to past glories, replaying our greatest hits, which only serves to make the present moment seem dull by comparison. More often, and more painfully, it clings to past mistakes, hurts, and regrets. We carry our failures around our necks like a garland of stones. We endlessly relitigate old arguments in the courtroom of our minds, always coming up with the perfect retort hours, days, or years too late. We allow the pain of an old betrayal to continue to wound us in the present. Letting go of the past does not mean developing amnesia. It does not mean pretending that hurtful things did not happen. It means understanding that the past exists now only as a thought in your mind. It means putting down the heavy sack of stones so that you can walk freely without being burdened by a weight that no longer needs to be carried. And just as we cling to the past, we cling to the future. We invest so much of our present moment energy in worrying about, planning for, and fantasizing about a future that is utterly unknowable. We create rigid expectations for our careers, our relationships, and our lives, and then suffer from anxiety when we fear those expectations won't be met. Letting go of the future does not mean being irresponsible or failing to plan. It means holding our plans lightly. It is the understanding that a map is not the territory. We can set a direction, we can have goals and intentions, but we must be willing to adapt to the changing landscape of life. It is about cultivating a deep trust in our ability to handle whatever arises, rather than trying to eliminate all uncertainty, which is an impossible task. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates this entire practice. 2 monks, 1 senior and 1 junior, were on a long walking pilgrimage. Their monastic vows strictly forbade them from touching a woman. As they journeyed, they came to a river where the bridge had been washed out. The current was strong, and the riverbed was a sea of slick, muddy stones. On the bank stood a young woman in fine silk robes, clearly distressed, as she could not cross without ruining her clothes and possibly being swept away. The junior monk, a stickler for the rules, stood back, feeling a sense of righteous purity. The senior monk, however, simply looked at the woman, saw her predicament, and without a word, walked over to her. He hoisted her onto his back, waded carefully through the turbulent river, and set her down gently on the opposite bank. He then bowed slightly and continued on his journey. The junior monk was utterly scandalized. He hurried to catch up, his mind a raging storm of judgment and indignation. For hours, as they walked in silence, he fumed. He replayed the scene in his mind. He built an ironclad case against the senior monk's transgression. He felt the weight of this perceived injustice growing heavier and heavier with every step. Finally, as evening approached, he could bear it no longer. He burst out, "Brother, how could you have done that? You know our vows. You are forbidden to touch a woman, yet you picked one up and carried her. You have violated your sacred commitment." The senior monk stopped, turned to his young companion, and a gentle, serene smile graced his face. "Brother," he said softly, "I set that woman down by the river hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story reveals the heart of letting go. We are all, in so many ways, the junior monk. We carry around our judgments, our resentments, our ideas of how things should be, long after the actual events have passed. These mental burdens exhaust us and prevent us from experiencing the freedom and peace of the present moment. Letting go is the simple, profound act of recognizing what we are still carrying and gently setting it down. This is not a grand, one-time event. It is a skill, a muscle that we must build through daily practice. You can practice letting go when you are stuck in traffic, releasing the tension of needing to be somewhere else. You can practice letting go of the need to win a minor disagreement with a loved one. You can practice letting go of your perfectly planned evening when an unexpected interruption occurs. Each time you consciously release your grip on a small thing, you strengthen your capacity to let go of the larger, heavier burdens. Ultimately, letting go is an act of supreme wisdom and trust. It is the wisdom to see that our own clinging is the source of our suffering, and it is the trust that if we open our hand, if we release our grip on the past and the future, we will not fall into an abyss. Instead, we will find that we are held by the vast, open, and liberating space of the present moment. But as we practice this art, we often discover that some burdens are particularly heavy and difficult to release. They are sticky with the residue of deep personal pain and injustice. Chief among these heavy stones is the resentment we hold towards those who have harmed us. To truly lighten the heart, we must now look specifically at the courageous and often misunderstood practice that allows us to let go of these heaviest of all burdens. We must explore the healing power of forgiveness. As we become more mindful of what we choose to consume, we naturally begin a parallel and equally important practice, choosing what we will no longer carry. Every time we choose an uplifting book over a gossip magazine, or a quiet walk over an angry news program, we are performing a subtle but powerful act of release. This process of intentional release, of unburdening the mind, is a skill in itself. It is the profound and liberating art of letting go. In our culture, the idea of letting go is often misunderstood. It can be perceived as an act of weakness, of giving up, of passive defeat. But from the perspective of inner freedom, letting go is one of the most courageous, intelligent, and powerful actions we can ever take. Most of us live our lives like a person with a clenched fist. We are desperately holding on to things we believe are essential for our survival and happiness. We clench our fist around our need to control outcomes. We clench it around our cherished opinions and identities. We clench it around our memories of past hurts and our detailed plans for the future. We believe this constant tension, this white-knuckled grip on reality, is what gives us strength and security. But if you were to physically clench your fist as tightly as you could for an entire day, you would not feel strong. You would feel exhausted, pained, and utterly depleted. Our minds are no different. The constant act of holding on is the primary source of our mental tension and spiritual exhaustion. Letting go is the courageous act of unclenching that fist. It is the moment we realize that the thing we are holding on to is not a precious gem, but a burning coal, and that our own grip is what is causing the pain. Let us look at some of the heavy things we are clinging to. First, we cling to control. We carry a detailed blueprint in our minds of how life should unfold, how others should behave, and how we should feel. When reality, in its wild and unpredictable nature, inevitably deviates from our blueprint, we suffer. We try to manage every outcome, pre-solve every problem, and steer the river of life into the narrow channel of our own desires. This is an impossible and deeply exhausting task. The practice of letting go is the wisdom of the farmer. The farmer can diligently prepare the soil, plant the seed, provide water, and remove the weeds. She does everything in her power, but she cannot control the weather. She cannot command the sun to shine or the rain to fall. There comes a point where she must surrender her crop to the larger forces of nature. Letting go of control is this kind of surrender. It is doing our best with diligence and care, and then releasing our attachment to the result, trusting that we can meet whatever comes with the resources we have. We also cling with ferocious tenacity, to the past. The monkey mind loves to swing from the branches of yesterday. Sometimes it clings to past glories, replaying our greatest hits, which only serves to make the present moment seem dull by comparison. More often, and more painfully, it clings to past mistakes, hurts, and regrets. We carry our failures around our necks like a garland of stones. We endlessly relitigate old arguments in the courtroom of our minds, always coming up with the perfect retort hours, days, or years too late. We allow the pain of an old betrayal to continue to wound us in the present. Letting go of the past does not mean developing amnesia. It does not mean pretending that hurtful things did not happen. It means understanding that the past exists now only as a thought in your mind. It means putting down the heavy sack of stones so that you can walk freely without being burdened by a weight that no longer needs to be carried. And just as we cling to the past, we cling to the future. We invest so much of our present moment energy in worrying about, planning for, and fantasizing about a future that is utterly unknowable. We create rigid expectations for our careers, our relationships, and our lives, and then suffer from anxiety when we fear those expectations won't be met. Letting go of the future does not mean being irresponsible or failing to plan. It means holding our plans lightly. It is the understanding that a map is not the territory. We can set a direction, we can have goals and intentions, but we must be willing to adapt to the changing landscape of life. It is about cultivating a deep trust in our ability to handle whatever arises, rather than trying to eliminate all uncertainty, which is an impossible task. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates this entire practice. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long walking pilgrimage. Their monastic vows strictly forbade them from touching a woman. As they journeyed, they came to a river where the bridge had been washed out. The current was strong, and the riverbed was a sea of slick, muddy stones. On the bank stood a young woman in fine silk robes, clearly distressed, as she could not cross without ruining her clothes and possibly being swept away. The junior monk, a stickler for the rules, stood back, feeling a sense of righteous purity. The senior monk, however, simply looked at the woman, saw her predicament, and without a word, walked over to her. He hoisted her onto his back, waded carefully through the turbulent river, and set her down gently on the opposite bank. He then bowed slightly and continued on his journey. The junior monk was utterly scandalized. He hurried to catch up, his mind a raging storm of judgment and indignation. For hours, as they walked in silence, he fumed. He replayed the scene in his mind. He built an ironclad case against the senior monk's transgression. He felt the weight of this perceived injustice growing heavier and heavier with every step. Finally, as evening approached, he could bear it no longer. He burst out, "Brother, how could you have done that? You know our vows. You are forbidden to touch a woman, yet you picked one up and carried her. You have violated your sacred commitment." The senior monk stopped, turned to his young companion, and a gentle, serene smile graced his face. "Brother," he said softly, "I set that woman down by the river hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story reveals the heart of letting go. We are all, in so many ways, the junior monk. We carry around our judgments, our resentments, our ideas of how things should be, long after the actual events have passed. These mental burdens exhaust us and prevent us from experiencing the freedom and peace of the present moment. Letting go is the simple, profound act of recognizing what we are still carrying and gently setting it down. This is not a grand, one-time event. It is a skill, a muscle that we must build through daily practice. You can practice letting go when you are stuck in traffic, releasing the tension of needing to be somewhere else. You can practice letting go of the need to win a minor disagreement with a loved one. You can practice letting go of your perfectly planned evening when an unexpected interruption occurs. Each time you consciously release your grip on a small thing, you strengthen your capacity to let go of the larger, heavier burdens. Ultimately, letting go is an act of supreme wisdom and trust. It is the wisdom to see that our own clinging is the source of our suffering, and it is the trust that if we open our hand, if we release our grip on the past and the future, we will not fall into an abyss. Instead, we will find that we are held by the vast, open, and liberating space of the present moment. But as we practice this art, we often discover that some burdens are particularly heavy and difficult to release. They are sticky with the residue of deep personal pain and injustice. Chief among these heavy stones is the resentment we hold towards those who have harmed us. To truly lighten the heart, we must now look specifically at the courageous and often misunderstood practice that allows us to let go of these heaviest of all burdens. We must explore the healing power of forgiveness. Throughout this journey, we have gathered a remarkable set of tools and insights. We have learned to anchor ourselves in the breath, to see the impermanent nature of our experience, and to question the solidity of our own self. We have cultivated a heart of loving kindness, compassion, and joy, and learned to balance these with the profound stability of equanimity. We have explored the art of letting go, the healing power of forgiveness, and the practical skill of recognizing the hindrances that cloud our minds. One might wonder how all these different practices fit together. Are they just a random assortment of helpful techniques? The answer is no. They are, in fact, interconnected facets of a single, magnificent, and coherent blueprint for a liberated life. This blueprint is the centerpiece of the Buddha's teaching. It is the complete map for the journey from suffering to peace. It is called the Noble Eightfold Path. It is best not to think of this path as a linear sequence of 8 steps you must climb in order. It is more like a majestic wheel with 8 spokes. Each spoke is essential for the wheel to be whole and for it to turn. The cultivation of one spoke naturally supports and strengthens all the others. As the wheel begins to turn, it generates a powerful momentum, an upward spiral that carries us toward greater clarity and freedom. The path is traditionally divided into 3 essential sections, which cover every aspect of our human experience: our wisdom, our ethical conduct in the world, and our inner mental discipline. The first division is wisdom. This is the foundation, the clear understanding that guides all our efforts. It consists of the first 2 path factors. The first is right understanding, or right view. This is the map itself. It is the intellectual clarity to see things as they truly are. This means understanding the core truths we have been exploring. The reality of dukkha, or dissatisfaction. The truth that its cause lies in our own craving and aversion. The liberating truth that this dissatisfaction can cease. And the truth that this very eightfold path is the way to that cessation. It is the experiential understanding of anicca, impermanence, and anatta, no self. Without right understanding, our practice would be blind. We would be wandering in the forest without a compass, mistaking our own confusion for progress. The second factor of wisdom is right intention, or right thought. If right view is the map, right intention is the conscious and heartfelt decision to follow it. It is the act of aligning our will with our wisdom. It is about purifying the motivations of our heart. The teachings break this down into 3 key intentions. First is the intention of renunciation, which is a beautiful way of saying letting go. It is the intention to release our grip on craving, to turn away from the endless chase for pleasure and validation. Second is the intention of goodwill, which is the very essence of metta. It is the active intention to meet all beings, including ourselves, with kindness and friendship. And third is the intention of harmlessness, which is the essence of karuna, compassion. It is the firm commitment to not cause harm through our thoughts, words, or deeds. Right intention ensures that our journey is fueled by wisdom and love, not by ambition or ego. The second division of the path is ethical conduct. This section recognizes that inner peace is impossible to cultivate if our outer life is in chaos and causing harm. Our actions in the world create the very conditions of our mind. This division consists of 3 factors. The first is right speech. This simple phrase contains a profound teaching on mindful communication. It means abstaining from 4 types of harmful speech. First, false speech, or lying. Second, slanderous speech, the kind that divides people against each other, including gossip. Third, harsh speech, which includes insults, verbal abuse, and needless cruelty. And fourth, idle chatter, the kind of pointless, frivolous talk that agitates the mind and wastes precious time and energy. Practicing right speech means using our words to promote truth, harmony, kindness, and meaning. Next is right action. This refers to our bodily conduct. The core principle, again, is harmlessness. It is traditionally defined as abstaining from taking life, abstaining from taking what is not given, stealing, and abstaining from sexual misconduct. In modern terms, this is a call to live with a deep integrity. It is a commitment to respect the life and property of others, and to conduct ourselves in our intimate relationships with honesty, care, and a refusal to exploit or deceive. The third factor of ethical conduct is right livelihood. This extends the principles of harmlessness and integrity into our professional lives. It means we should strive to earn a living in a way that does not cause harm to other beings or to society at large. This is a radical and deeply challenging teaching in the modern world. It asks us to look honestly at our work. Does it depend on the exploitation of people or the planet? Does it involve trading in weapons, intoxicants, or poisons? Does it promote craving, greed, and delusion, as some forms of advertising or finance might? Right livelihood encourages us to find work that is not only financially sustaining, but also ethically sound and personally meaningful, work that we can feel proud of, that aligns with our deepest values. The final division of the path is mental discipline. This is the section that deals directly with the training of the mind, the meditative heart of the path. It comprises the final 3 factors. The first is right effort. This is not a grim, joyless struggle. It is the application of a joyful and balanced energy to our inner work. The practice has 4 aspects: the effort to prevent unwholesome states like anger or greed from arising, the effort to abandon them once they have arisen, the effort to cultivate wholesome states like kindness and compassion that have not yet arisen, and the effort to maintain and develop these wholesome states once they are present. This is the active, moment-to-moment work of being the wise innkeeper of our mind. Next is the factor we have come to know so well: right mindfulness. This is the heart of meditative practice. It is the ability to maintain a clear, balanced, and non-judgmental awareness of our present moment experience. This includes mindfulness of the body and the breath, mindfulness of our feelings as they arise and pass away, mindfulness of our mind states like the 5 hindrances, and mindfulness of the ultimate nature of reality, itself, its impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and selflessness. Right mindfulness is the clear, steady light of awareness that illuminates the path. Finally, all 7 preceding factors come together to support the 8th, right concentration. This is the ability of the mind, once it has been calmed by ethical conduct and focused by mindfulness, to become unified, collected, and stable. It is the state of mind that is free from the 5 hindrances, a mind that can rest upon a single object, such as the breath, with unwavering stillness. This leads to deep states of meditative peace and clarity, a profound quieting of the inner chaos that allows the deepest insights to arise. The Buddha once compared his teachings to a raft. He said they were built for a single purpose: to carry a person from the shore of suffering, danger, and confusion to the far shore of liberation, safety, and peace. The Noble Eightfold Path is this raft. It is constructed of 8 strong logs, all tightly bound together. Right view is the understanding of where the other shore lies. Right intention is the will to make the journey. Right speech, action, and livelihood ensure that the raft is not leaky, and that we do not create waves that capsize ourselves. Right effort is the energy of paddling. Right mindfulness is the watchfulness that keeps us from drifting off course. And right concentration is the arrival in the calm, safe harbor. Every single log is essential. As we learn to walk this integrated path, as we practice living this way not just in meditation, but in every moment, our mind undergoes a profound transformation. Our awareness becomes more refined, more sensitive. We are no longer tossed about by the giant, dramatic waves of our thoughts and feelings. We begin to notice something far more subtle, something that was there all along but was obscured by the noise. We begin to notice the water itself. We begin to sense the quiet, vast, and silent space between our thoughts. This is the discovery of true silence, not as an absence of sound, but as the very ground of being from which all sound and all thought arises. Having walked the great, integrated path of wisdom, ethics, and mental discipline, our minds begin to change in profound ways. Our awareness, once scattered and reactive, becomes more collected and refined. We have learned to navigate the great storms of emotion with the heart practices of love and compassion, and we have become skilled at recognizing the uninvited guests of the 5 hindrances. Now, our journey takes us from the vast and sometimes turbulent ocean of our experience to a place of even greater subtlety and depth. We move toward the source. We begin to listen for the silence. There is a pervasive myth about meditation, a belief that its ultimate goal is to achieve a state of no thought, a completely blank and empty mind. This misunderstanding creates a great deal of struggle and frustration for practitioners. They sit down to practice, and they find that the mind is a whirlwind of activity. They then judge themselves for failing to stop their thoughts, believing their mind is uniquely and hopelessly busy. But the mind's nature is to think, just as it is the heart's nature to beat. To try and forcibly stop thought is not only impossible, it is an act of violence against our own nature. The goal of this path is not to stop our thoughts, but to fundamentally change our relationship to them. It is to stop being their helpless subject and to become their calm, impartial witness. And in this shift from identification to observation, we make a remarkable discovery. We tend to experience our thoughts as a solid, continuous stream. It feels like a non-stop internal monologue, a movie that never ends. This perception of a solid stream is what feels so overwhelming, so claustrophobic. It feels as if there is no escape, because the thinking is constant. But this experience, like so many of our perceptions, is an illusion. It is an illusion created by the sheer speed of the mind and our habit of focusing only on the thoughts themselves. It is like standing inches away from a fast-moving freight train. All you perceive is a solid, deafening blur of steel. You are too close to see that the train is actually composed of individual cars, and that between each and every car, there is a space, a gap, a moment of emptiness. The thoughts in our mind are like the cars of that train. They are discrete, individual events. A thought arises, it exists for a moment, and then it dissolves. And in the space between the dissolution of one thought and the arising of the next, there is a gap, there is a pause, there is a tiny window into a vast and profound silence. At first, this gap may seem infinitesimally small, almost imperceptible. The mind moves so quickly that one thought seems to crash directly into the next. But as our mindfulness becomes more stable and our attention more subtle, we can begin to notice these spaces. The practice of discovering this silence is one of gentle, patient listening. Imagine you are sitting in a room with a noisy, unpredictable machine that clanks and whirs and buzzes. At first, all you can perceive is the noise. It fills the room. But if you relax and you listen very, very carefully, you start to notice something else. You start to hear the moments of quiet between the sounds. You are not trying to stop the machine. You are simply shifting your attention from the noise to the silence that holds the noise. This is precisely the practice we can bring to our own minds. Instead of focusing only on the thoughts, we can set a gentle intention to listen for the silence from which they emerge and into which they dissolve. As you rest with the anchor of your breath, become curious. Do not try to force the mind to be quiet. That will only create more noise. Simply listen. A thought will arise. Let it be there. Watch it as it plays out, and then notice the moment it ends. In that moment, before the next thought car has coupled to it, can you sense the space? Can you feel the quiet? It may last for only a fraction of a second, but it is there. And in that fraction of a second lies a peace that is beyond all understanding. This is not a practice of striving or achieving. It is a practice of relaxing and noticing. When you first attempt this, you may find that your mind seems louder than ever before. This is normal. It is as if, by listening for silence, you have suddenly become aware of just how much noise there really is. Do not be discouraged. This is a sign of increasing sensitivity. Simply maintain your gentle, curious intention. The thoughts are not the enemy. The noise is not the problem. The only goal is to become aware of the silence that is already and always present, holding all the noise. When you touch this silence, even for a moment, you realize something profound. True peace is not the result of finally winning the war against your thoughts. It is the discovery that you were never at war in the first place. True peace is not an achievement. It is a recognition of what is already here. It is the discovery of a background of silent, spacious awareness that has been present all along, obscured by the frantic activity on the surface. The thoughts are no longer a personal problem to be solved. They are simply impersonal events, arising and falling like waves on the surface of a deep and silent ocean. You are not the waves. You are the ocean. This leads us to the most powerful and all-encompassing metaphor for the nature of our mind. Your true nature, the essence of your being, is like a vast, open, and brilliant blue sky. It is boundless, clear, and fundamentally peaceful. All of the contents of your experience, your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, your sensations are like clouds passing through this sky. Some clouds are white, puffy, and pleasant to look at, like thoughts of joy or feelings of love. Other clouds are dark, heavy, and threatening, like thoughts of fear, anger, or the 5 hindrances. Sometimes the clouds are so thick and dense that you cannot see the blue sky at all. The entire world seems to be nothing but a dark, oppressive grey. But no matter how thick, dark, or stormy the clouds may be, they never, ever stain or harm the sky itself. The sky is not the clouds. The sky is the vast, open, and welcoming space that allows the clouds to be. The clouds are temporary visitors. They arise, they pass through, and they dissolve. But the sky, your fundamental awareness, remains, unchanged, unharmed, ever present. For most of our lives, we have been identified with the clouds. We have believed that we are our thoughts, that we are our feelings. When a sad thought appears, we say, I am sad. When an angry thought appears, we say, I am angry. We have been living our lives as if we are a small, fragile cloud, buffeted by the winds and in constant danger of dissipating. The great liberation of this path is the shift in identification, from the fleeting, ephemeral cloud to the vast, eternal sky. You are not the anger, you are the space in which anger is appearing. You are not the anxiety, You are the awareness that is noticing the anxiety. In this shift lies all the freedom and all the peace you have ever been seeking. This is not just a beautiful idea. It is the very reality we can discover for ourselves, the ultimate destination of our journey inward. We have journeyed far into the interior landscape of the mind. We have followed the map of wisdom, navigated the difficult terrain of our habits, and cultivated the warm, life-giving qualities of the heart. Now, we arrive at the summit. From this high vantage point, all the individual features of the landscape, the winding rivers, the dark forests, the sunlit meadows can be seen as part of one single, vast, and unified whole. We have arrived at the culminating vision of this path, the one image that holds and harmonizes all the others. It is the simplest of truths, and the most profound. Your true nature is not the content of your mind, but the context in which it all appears. Your true nature is like the vast, open, and ever-present sky, and everything else that you experience, every thought, every emotion, every sensation, every memory is just weather. For most of our lives, we have mistaken ourselves for the weather. We have lived as if we were a small, fragile cloud, at the mercy of the unpredictable winds of fate. When the weather of our mind was sunny and pleasant, we felt happy. When the weather turned dark and stormy, we felt miserable and afraid. We have spent all our energy trying to control the weather, chasing the pleasant clouds and running from the frightening ones, a futile and exhausting struggle. The great liberation, the ultimate homecoming of this practice, is the radical shift in identification from the fleeting weather to the eternal sky. Let us revisit our entire journey through the lens of this clarifying vision. The pervasive dissatisfaction of dukkha is the feeling of being a cloud that wishes it were a different kind of cloud, or that wishes the weather were different than it is. The chattering of the monkey mind is nothing more than a particularly chaotic weather pattern of sky, filled with fast-moving, disconnected clouds and unpredictable gusts of wind. The great law of anicca, impermanence, is taught most perfectly by the sky itself, which holds the endless procession of clouds as they form, drift, change shape, and inevitably dissolve, demonstrating that no weather pattern, no matter how beautiful or terrifying, lasts forever. And the profound truth of anatta, no self, is revealed when we search for a solid, permanent cloud self and find only a temporary, conditioned process of wind and water vapor, while the only constant is the vast open sky of awareness in which the clouds appear. The engines of our suffering, craving and aversion, are the winds that create the weather. Craving is the wind that desperately tries to pull the beautiful, sun-drenched clouds towards us and hold them in place. Aversion is the fierce gale that tries to violently shred and push away the dark storm clouds. Both are a useless struggle against the nature of the atmosphere. The second arrow is our own personal weather-making machine. A lightning bolt may strike from a passing cloud the first arrow, but the second arrow is our choice to generate an entirely new and personal storm system in response. A dark cloud of self-blame and resentment that follows the first, making our inner world feel much more violent than it needed to be. The 5 hindrances are simply specific, recognizable weather patterns. Sensual desire is a beautiful, distracting rainbow that pulls our gaze and promises a pot of gold that isn't there. Ill will is a dark, angry thunderhead, flashing with the lightning of rage. Sloth and torpor is a thick, heavy, low-lying fog that dampens all energy and clarity. Restlessness and worry is a frantic tornado-like funnel cloud, spinning chaotically and going nowhere. And doubt is a confusing, disorienting mist that obscures the view and makes it impossible to find our way. The sky is not the rainbow, nor the thunderstorm, nor the fog. The sky is the boundless space that allows all these weather patterns to manifest and, in their own time, to pass. The practice, then, becomes breathtakingly simple in its instruction. It is the practice of being the sky. When a thought or feeling arises in your mind, you consciously shift your perspective. Instead of saying, "I am angry," you recognize, "There is a cloud of anger passing through the sky of my awareness." Instead of thinking, "I am an anxious person," you realize, "The weather pattern of anxiety is present right now." This is not a mere word game. This reframing is the most powerful psychological shift you can ever make. It creates immediate space. When you believe you are the storm cloud, you are tossed about, drenched, and pummeled by its energy. But when you know yourself to be the sky, you can watch the storm approach, be present with its full intensity, and watch it recede, all from a place of deep, unshakable peace. You remain. To be the sky is to cultivate a radically welcoming and spacious attitude. The sky does not argue with the weather. It does not judge the storm cloud or praise the sunny day. It does not try to hold on to the good weather or push away the bad. It allows all of it. It offers no resistance. This is the very embodiment of equanimity. It is the wisdom that understands that all weather is a natural expression of the atmosphere, and that fighting it is both foolish and impossible. Our practice is to cultivate this same sky-like quality in our minds. We allow the dark thoughts to be there without believing them. We allow the painful feelings to be there without resisting them. We trust that they, too, are just passing through. And here we discover the most beautiful and healing truth of all. No matter how violent the storm, no matter how black the thunderhead, no matter how searing the lightning or how bruising the hail, the weather can never, ever harm the sky. The sky cannot be burnt, it cannot be torn, it cannot be stained. When the most terrible storm has finally passed, the sky is revealed once more, as pristine, as clear, and as luminous as it was before the storm began. This is a perfect metaphor for the nature of consciousness itself. No matter what traumas, pains, or difficulties you have endured in your life, your core awareness, your true sky mind, has never been damaged. The memories are clouds, the scars are clouds, the stories are clouds, but your fundamental nature, the vast, open awareness that is reading these words right now, is, and has always been, completely whole, complete, and free. You do not need to be fixed. You only need to awaken to the part of you that has never been broken. This is the ultimate liberation. It is the end of the long and painful exile of identifying with the fleeting clouds. It is the homecoming to our true nature as the vast, silent, and peaceful sky. This is the peace that surpasses all understanding, because it is not a peace that depends on the weather being good. It is a peace that can hold thunderstorms and sunshine with equal grace. It is a peace that is not built, but discovered. It is the discovery of the silence and stillness that was here all along, patiently waiting behind the noise of the clouds. This profound realization, this deep sense of coming home, is the peak of our inner journey, and it is not something to be left on the meditation cushion. It is a reality to be lived, to be embodied, and to be carried into every moment of our lives, especially into that sacred, transitional moment when we offer our minds and bodies to the mystery of sleep. We have now reached the summit and have seen the vast, liberating view of the sky-like nature of our own mind. We have understood, with both our intellect and our heart, that our true self is not the fleeting weather of our thoughts and emotions, but the boundless, peaceful sky in which they appear. This profound realization is not meant to be a transient meditative experience. It is a truth to be lived, a reality to be embodied. And there is no more crucial time to bring this realization into our lives than in the sacred transition between the world of doing and the world of being, the quiet moments as we lay our head down to sleep. What follows is not another complex technique, but a simple, gentle ritual of release, a way to consciously gather all the wisdom and compassion we have cultivated and use it to guide ourselves into a state of deep and profound rest. The first step is to prepare the space, both externally and internally. Our environment sends powerful signals to our mind. An hour or so before you intend to sleep, begin to enact the digital sunset. Consciously turn off the bright screens, the phone, the television, the computer. Allow the light in your room to dim. This simple act tells your entire nervous system that the day is ending, that the time for stimulation is over, and that the time for stillness is approaching. See if you can create a small sense of order in your bedroom. A cluttered space can contribute to a cluttered mind. The simple act of tidying a few things, of creating a clean and calm environment, is a beautiful act of respect for the rest you are about to receive. Your bedroom is a sanctuary, not an entertainment center or an office. Let it be a space dedicated to peace. Now, as you lie down in your bed, the second step is to consciously arrive in your body, let go of the day, let go of tomorrow, and for just a few moments, arrive fully here, now. Begin with 3 conscious breaths, making them a little deeper and slower than usual. With each inhalation, feel that you are breathing in calm and stillness. With each exhalation, feel that you are releasing the accumulated tension and stress of the day. Imagine the out-breath carrying away the noise, the deadlines, the worries, leaving you more present with each cycle. This is the act of dropping your anchor into the quiet harbor of the present moment. Then, begin a gentle scan of your body, a soft inventory of physical sensations. Bring your awareness down to your feet. You do not need to change anything. Simply notice the feeling of your feet. And as you notice them, silently offer them the invitation to soften, to release, to let go of their holding. Then, move your awareness slowly up through your legs, your hips, feeling their weight and their connection to the bed. Invite them to be heavy, to be held. Bring your awareness to your abdomen, feeling the gentle rhythm of your breath. Let your belly be soft. Move your awareness to your hands. So often we hold tension here. Consciously invite your fingers to uncurl, your palms to soften. Let this wave of gentle awareness move up through your arms and into your shoulders. This is a place where we carry so much of our burden. On your next out breath, invite your shoulders to drop, to melt, to release their heavy load. Finally, bring your awareness to your face. Soften your jaw, let your tongue rest gently in your mouth, and feel the tiny muscles around your eyes begin to relax. You are not forcing relaxation, you are simply creating the conditions for it to arise naturally. You are letting your body know that it is safe, it is supported, and it has permission to rest. The third step is to gently tend to the heart. Having arrived in the body, we can now acknowledge the emotional residue of the day. Without getting caught in the details, simply allow a general sense of the day that has passed to be present, its joys, its challenges, its frustrations. And then, you can offer yourself a few specific phrases of metta, tailored for this moment of transition. Silently, gently, repeat to yourself, "May I be safe and protected throughout this night. May my body receive the deep, healing rest that it needs. May my mind be peaceful and calm. And perhaps most importantly, may I let go of all the worries and cares of the day. They have been attended to as best I could. They can wait until tomorrow. For now, my only work is to rest." This is an act of profound self-compassion, giving yourself explicit permission to lay down your mental burdens, just as you have laid down your physical body. And now, the final step, the great release. This is where we rest in the ultimate view. Bring to mind the image of the vast open sky. See all the events of your day, the conversations you had, the tasks you completed, the worries that are rosy as clouds that have already drifted past in the immense sky of your life. They were here, and now they are gone. The weather of today is over. The sky is clearing for the night. All that remains is you, the vast, silent, and peaceful sky of awareness itself. Let go of all techniques now. Let go of watching the breath. Let go of the body scan. Let go of the phrases. Your only task is to rest, to simply be. If thoughts still arise, as they most certainly will, there is no need to be alarmed or to fight them. See them now not as intruders, but simply as the last few wisps of cloud drifting across the vast twilight sky. They have no substance, no power. You do not have to board them. You do not have to analyze them. You do not have to push them away. You are the sky, and you can watch them appear, drift, and dissolve without being disturbed. Feel the immense space that you are. Feel the inherent stillness that is your true nature. There is nothing to do. There is nowhere to go. There is nothing to fix. You are already whole. You are already peace. You are the sky. And in this knowing, in this vast, open, and trusting state of being, you can allow yourself to dissolve gently and peacefully into the deep mystery of sleep. This nightly ritual, this conscious act of release, is more than just a technique for better sleep. It is a practice that sanctifies the closing of each day. It transforms the often anxious moments before sleep into a profound act of meditation, a homecoming to the peace that is your very essence. We began this journey together in the dark, in a quiet room filled with the deafening noise of a restless mind. We started with the familiar feeling of being a prisoner of our own thoughts, exhausted but unable to rest, adrift on a stormy inner sea. From that place of turmoil, we embarked on an ancient path. We dared to look directly at our condition and gave it a name: Dukkha, the pervasive friction of a life at odds with reality. We met the frantic, chattering monkey mind, not as an enemy to be vanquished, but as a friend to be understood. In the simple, profound reality of our own breath, we found our anchor. Grounded in the present moment, we began to see the true nature of things, the universal law of anicca, that all things are impermanent like passing clouds, and the deep, liberating truth of anatta, that there is no solid, unchanging self to be found, only a flowing, dynamic process. We learned about the second arrow, and how so much of our suffering is a self-inflicted wound. We uncovered the twin engines of craving and aversion, and the 5 hindrances that so often block our path to peace. But this journey was not only one of wisdom, it was one of heart. We learned to cultivate the boundless warmth of loving kindness, the tender courage of compassion, the selfless delight of sympathetic joy, and the unshakable balance of equanimity. We practiced the art of letting go, the healing power of forgiveness. And finally, we came to rest in the most profound realization of all, that we are not the fleeting, turbulent weather of our minds, but the vast, silent, and ever-present sky that holds it all. If there is one essential truth to carry with you from this entire journey, let it be this: peace is not something you must seek, acquire, or win from the outside world. It is not a destination you must struggle to reach. Peace is your natural state. It is the inherent clarity of your mind, which is revealed when the sediment of confusion, craving, and aversion is allowed to gently settle. Because peace is not something the world can give you, it is also something the world can never take away. It is not dependent on your circumstances being perfect, or on your mind being silent. It is always here, always accessible, patiently waiting for you beneath the surface of all the noise. The path to this peace is not one of aggressive action, but of gentle undoing. It is a journey of letting go of what is not true, to reveal the profound and simple truth of what has been here all along. You now have the map, you have the tools. You have the understanding that the capacity for profound peace is not in some distant teaching or some future version of yourself, but within the very fabric of your own awareness, right now. You are not broken. You do not need to be fixed. You are the sky, which has never been harmed. Tonight, as you lay your head down to rest, you have a choice. You can continue to believe you are the storm, or you can remember that you are the sky. You can get lost in the clouds, or you can rest in the vast, open space that holds them. The entire path, the whole journey of liberation, begins with a single, simple, conscious action. It begins with your very next breath,